ask questions about our FY21 budget. But before we take any questions, Superintendent Clenchy has a presentation.
Great, thank you. So of course we'll be talking about this in more detail when we actually get to this item tonight. So this is just really for that quick broad overview. So we'll go through it quickly, and then if there are questions from any audience members, we'll take them, and if not, we'll wait until our more in-depth conversation later this evening. So ultimately, here's where we've landed as of today. We did send a memo around a notice around to each of the town administrators to let them know that these were the numbers that we've arrived at. So the proposed budget right now is $58,029,848. The increase is $2.29 million. The increase for the school district budget then is 4.12%. How that breaks down for the differential for between last year and this year for the towns: Bolton, we hit the 3% that Bolton had requested. Lancaster is at 2.77%, and Stow is at 1.37%. The drivers, we've talked about some of our key drivers before, so you've seen this, but I just want to go back again. Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment came in this year at 10.21%. Out of district tuition, we saw a definite increase of 30% with that. We had a couple of staffing that are absolutely necessary for our programming that are in this budget, as well as regular ed. And that regular ed position is actually a K position, and that's just because of registration numbers and move-ins to that particular community. The Unit A and C contract matrix, the step and lane changes, we've got about half of our teachers in that matrix right now. So of course, when they move up either through a step or a lane, and a step and a lane, then of course that's not the 2%, because it's that plus the 2%. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's very difficult for us, for example, to come in with a 2% budget or a 3% budget when we're dealing with this kind of thing. And this year as well, and again, this is old news to you, but you knew that this was coming. The former Minuteman positions are included in our budget for this year. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, because there were the 3 positions, one in each community. And what went with that was the positions, were the salaries, the benefits, the supplies, classroom supplies, and any other technology or any other hardware, software. So that was previously in the Minuteman assessment that went directly to the towns, and so that right now this year is inside of our budget. What this has meant for us right now, and these are the key reductions. 9 staff reductions is what we're projecting. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have a couple of programs that we're going to streamline. For example, the mentorship program that we've got in place right now, we've streamlined that a little bit. So those kinds of things, wherever we could find some streamlining, we did that. The Opec funding, we had $100,000 in there when you saw this at the workshop in January. We've cut that back right now to $50,000 is how much is sitting on the line that you'll see tonight. We did the same thing with the turf and the track field, because again, we've been saving for that because we know that that's coming, rather than waiting till something happens and then having to go to the towns to borrow money and whatever. So that, again, we had $100,000, I believe, Pat, in that line, and I think we've got 50 in that right now in the budget that you're going to see tonight. The school non-salary lines, what we did there was we went back to each of our schools and said, are there some other areas that you can cut? And each school submitted things that they felt that they could reduce in whatever form. We did that as well. I'm going to go back to the 9 staff positions in a minute, but Alita, can you go to the next slide, please? Facilities, you'll recall, for example, that was one ask that Rob had was for another member, and we just can't do it this year. And he came back with several reductions there. There were additional IT reductions and additional teaching and learning reductions as well. For example, teaching and learning came back with a $50,000 reduction in their line. So each unit really went out to wherever it was that they could to pull from and make the reductions. The 9 staff that I had alluded to earlier, that's across the district, 9 staff across the district. It's not specifically in one building. Right now, 5 of those have been identified through natural attrition. And so, you know, that's kind of a natural way of reducing staff. It's not clean in terms of, it still is going to mean that there are other implications for other staff members. But right now we have 4 left, and if you think about it, between now and, you know, another month or 2, we may be able to reduce by 1 more staff member or 2 through natural attrition. It's hard to say as we sit here tonight. So when you look at your executive summary tonight, you know, I think that there's a block there that you'll see that it says unidentified, but we, quite frankly, we know exactly what it's going to be. Again, at this point in time, we're not prepared to say names or positions or anything like that. It's just far too early. So that's why you've got the general 9. So in a nutshell, those are the types of reductions. The only thing I want to say too, and I know that other school committees have said, you know, we don't want you to say cuts, you can use the word reductions, and I understand that, but I've had to reduce every single year I've been here. And here I am again tonight, and my concern is that this is probably the last time I can do the reductions in this manner. We've had a number of principal meetings around this table, and next year, if I'm in the exact same, and this is not a threat, it's just what's gonna happen, is it'll have to be programs. Like, there are no more individual pieces that I can pull from, like, this is kind of it. This is my, basically the 4th year of doing this kind of thing. So that's kind of where that's at in terms of reductions. I'm not sure, Leah, I don't know if there's another slide there.
There's not.
There's not, thank you.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're sitting at tonight. So in essence, we hit the 3% that Bolton was looking for. Lancaster and Stow, I think, should both be happy with the numbers that they're receiving, the percentages. So I think that we've done a good job. I give all credit to Pat and her team, Michelle Cody, who's done yeoman's work, our principals for their creativity and innovation and consistently coming to the table. And, you know, they did say to me today, and I would want you to know what I expressed back. They said, we feel really badly about coming on the Saturday workshop day and putting out there how badly we felt we needed the counselor positions, and then to come back and say, well, I guess we have to cut them. And I said, no, I said, that's not at all. I said, again, previous school committees, and I think for all the right reasons, wanted to hear what you wanted and what you needed. Mm-hmm. And from my lens right now, if I was to put something back in there, one of the things I would want to put back in there would be at least one of those counselors, even if it's split between the 2 communities or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I said, you can't feel badly about coming forward and saying, look, we really need this, because the school committee needs to hear that.
That's right.
So they felt a little uncomfortable with that, but I still think it's a good process to go through. And I said that even to Rob Frieswick, this is the 2nd year you've asked for this. Maybe next year we can get it for you, you know. So I don't think there's anything wrong with coming forward and saying, this is what I think I need, or the department needs. So that's kind of where we're at tonight. So, and again, I'll go into a little bit more depth when we go into it tonight a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. So does any member of the public have any questions about the budget? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the FY21 budget hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And it is 6:08. Thank you. So now I will call to order the regular meeting of, I'm sorry.
Vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why
thought
we're
I was
here.
gonna
Going to get it right this time, because I screwed up the school choice one. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, note to self. All right, thank you. All right, so I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee for February 26th, and invite folks to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if they so choose. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Is anyone here for citizens' comments? Okay.
I'm just going to meet with the children.
Oh, okay. So, seeing none, we do have a presentation by the students of the Center School, and I'll let you do the honors.
Sure. I think that I saw Assistant Principal Neil in here. Was she there? I think she's out there with the children, so we'll wait till they come in, and I'm anxious to see what they have to say tonight about saving the earth. So we'll give them a minute
Somebody
to come
needs
in.
to do it, I'm glad. It sounds like it's in
School is
good
doing
hands.
it.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome.
Come on in.
Come on up to the front here.
Come on down.
We're so glad to see you. Hello. Hi, you can come right around over here, okay? And we'll move out of the way. Welcome. And so I'll introduce you, if that's okay. So if you don't know one of our assistant principals, this is Christy Neal, and she is our assistant principal over at the Center School. And I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much. And to our parents, we thank you so much for bringing your children tonight. We're really looking forward to this. Thank you. Christy?
So thank you all for having us. We're so excited to share this project. And Mrs. Vivirito's fourth grade class worked on from the very beginning of the year, actually. Part of their persuasive writing unit was to think of problems and be able to communicate about some solutions that might happen. And they identified a problem that they saw right in our school, and they're here to share what they came up with solutions and their great results.
Good evening. We're from Mrs. Norita's class, and we're each going to take a moment to introduce ourselves. I'm Jackson Welts.
I'm Nathan Blower. I'm Scarlett Eckel. I'm Karen McCarthy.
I'm Lila Souza. We are here tonight to tell you about the steps our class took to help Center School make choices that help the environment.
I'm Morgan Chandelmeyer, and I will be helping my classmates answer questions at the end of the presentation.
Our story starts when the school brought in the water coolers to replace the water fountains because the water in the fountains had harmful chemicals.
Sounds like a good idea, but the cups of the water floor station in the 4th and 5th grade hallway were distracted in our learning. Listen to this video to find out this distraction the cups were causing.
You can fast forward this part till we get to the girls. Can you fast forward it?
It just doesn't show me, so I don't know where to stop it.
Thanks.
Right there?
Great.
Is there volume?
There's mine. Yeah.
School supplies,
Selena, do you think that the disposable cups at summer school will distract from learning?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've definitely seen these little, cup towers, where they're just stacked up, and some people would probably go over and they'd be like, oh, that's neat, I think I'll build one. And then they would go away. Then someone else would come and they'd be like, oh, neat, I'll build one. And then another, and then another, and then another. And eventually it just takes up, a lot of time, and you're also taking up your learning time. So there's no real reason to have them as a distraction. You should have them in a safe area where no one can get them. So, no one can get all of them. So like in a little chute or something where you take one out and you can't take another until you're done with the first one. So that would be better because no one would be take over and build a huge tower because that would take up all the room.
That's a good idea. I mean, it probably weighs like 5, 10, probably not 10, but at least 5 minutes a day resetting up the cups. Like, it knocks over, but someone just comes in.
restacks them up and then just falls over again. The whole thing is, yeah, it's definitely distracting. And another way it could be distracting is if you take a cup and you secretly have it with you, maybe you have it in your pocket or something, and then while it's in your pocket, you're playing around with it, maybe you take it out a little bit and you're like fiddling with it, you're making a little thing out of it, and you're absolutely having no attention to whatever the teacher's talking about. So bottom line, it distracts from learning.
But the cups weren't just distracting the kids at the water cooler. They were distracting our class. Each time they crashed onto the floor, the noise interrupted our learning. So we talked to the fabulous Mrs. O'Brien and found out some information. In the first 24 days of school, we had used 24,400 cups and had spent $940. That's over 1,000 cups a day.
This is a problem because according to the World Wildlife Federation, on average, it takes a plastic cup 450 years to biodegrade.
That's so long, and most of the plastic we get rid of ends up in the ocean. There are 5 areas of trash in our oceans. One area, the Pacific Garbage Patch, is larger than Texas.
That's not good news, so we decided to do something about it. We presented the facts at our all-school meeting and took away the plastic cups outside of our classroom.
Now 4th and 5th grade students have to ask their teachers if they want a cup. We also had a school-wide challenge to encourage students to bring their own water bottles. Each day, 3/4 of the class brought in water bottles. They colored in one letter on their Save the Earth sign. When each class's sign was colored in, we had an all-school pajama day. Talk about fun.
But it wasn't just fun. Here's what happened when we took away the plastic cup station upstairs. Now each month we only use 4,333 cups and spend $262. That's about 20,000 fewer cups a month and almost $700 less a month.
That's right, if we multiplied those numbers times 3, because it has been 3 months since we made the change, we have saved 60,000 cups from entering the landfill and saved the school $2,034.
That makes me think about sperm whales. Why does talking about cups make you think about sperm whales? Well, sperm whales are the whales most affected by plastics in the ocean. In November of 2018, a sperm whale was found on the coast of Indonesia. It had 115 plastic cups in its stomach. That's so sad.
It is, but think about the difference we've made. We've helped keep 60,000 cups from entering the ocean.
That's incredible. Plus, we saved all that money. We could take other actions that make a difference. That's true. We could replace the cafeteria's plastic utensils with reusable cutlery.
That's a great idea. We could replace the foam plastic trays with reusable trays.
Or we could start composting our food waste.
We'd like to apply for a Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Reduce, Reuse, Repair micro grant so that we can replace the disposable cutlery or disposable trays or start composting our waste.
The DEP awards grants to schools and communities to reduce waste. We think our success in reducing the amount of plastic cups consumed at Center School will increase our likelihood of winning a grant. We'd also like to know if you know of other waste prevention grants we could apply for.
Thank you for your consideration and thanks for letting us present tonight. We look forward to hearing from you.
Any questions?
To the school committee, any questions, Mr. Horesh?
Guys, this was awesome. This was really, really nice. And the change that you made was outstanding. A few slides back, you had a list of other initiatives that you could take. Right here, the plastic utensils and replacing the foam trays with reusable trays. Would you need to wait for the grant to start that, or have you already started conversations about how you could potentially make that change?
Well, we're going to wait for the grant first and then we can sort of try to figure it out.
Those are some great ideas, though.
Anything else, Elaine?
So this is great, you guys. It's just like really fantastic. And I think it really speaks to how important it is that when you see something that you think you can improve, like speak up and say something, because look at the difference that you guys made just by noticing that the cups were a distraction and you were using too many of them. Did you face any challenges or obstacles when you were trying to reduce the usage of cups, and how did you overcome that?
Were there people who didn't want to use cups over again, or just, or just wanted to just keep pulling the cups out of the racks so that they can play with them?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did you tell them?
We told.
You didn't beat them up.
There wasn't people that didn't want to.
I think the problems were before this whole project started, people playing with the cups and being silly with the cups and distracting people. But once this project started and other kids were made aware of this big size of this big problem, then we had less problems with the cups in the home.
Right.
Kids, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Leah?
Hi guys, great job. This is really interesting. Thank you so much for this. I wonder, how did Mrs. Narita kind of get you guys to brainstorm ideas? Was this just the idea that was like the very most important to you all, or were there other problems in your school that you were considering addressing?
This was basically the only idea that we had.
Yeah, because center school's pretty awesome. You make us all proud. Thanks, guys.
So I really like the idea that you guys are interested in a grant, and $5,000 is a lot of money. So what do you, if you get the grant, what are your plans for using that money? Have you talked about that yet?
Well, if we get the grant, we want to replace everything with reusable items.
Sounds good. Very good.
I'm so impressed. I can't thank you enough for coming out tonight, and I think to your teacher, thank you so much.
Well,
They
thank
were
you. They're
fabulous.
so fantastic. And I really do have to say, this whole thing was student-led. It was actually Scarlett one day. She's like, I'm so sick and tired of those cups. I mean, we just, literally, they were falling down. And so I wouldn't have done anything by myself. But when you realize it's bothering the kids as much as it's bothering yourself, then it's time to take action.
Yeah.
So they really started off the whole thing.
And of course, I look at it through a very different lens because, I never once thought about the plastic cups until tonight. And of course, my focus was always the water. And so it's interesting to see this and to see the problem that you addressed and how you addressed it, and that you were so successful. Oh my goodness. So hats off to all of you, and you were so professional tonight, so poised. And we're just so proud of you. So thank you. And Principal McCarthy here is here.
I started early. This is great.
They were fabulous. So thank you very much. Thank you, our parents, for bringing them. We're so proud of them. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you.
All right, come on over.
Come over, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you.
In the old days, it was just a big cup hanging on a string in the water fountain.
I think we might be past the take cup stage.
Wasn't very sanitary, but it was good for the earth.
Stainless steel.
Yeah, is it Nashoba?
Did you guys announce yet the assessment? Did you announce the number?
No, yeah, she already did that.
Okay.
Did you get my email?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So my debt schedule that I have is wrong.
Yeah, he refinanced that back in transition.
Okay.
That's why. Shorten the time.
Do you have the number that the assessment?
No, the number of the assessment is not there yet.
When does that come out?
Probably the day that we're closed,
Oh, okay.
which is next 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, I think she needs to log in on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'm going to refocus us in regard to the school committee chair updates. Is that okay?
Yep.
You ready?
Thank you. Yeah.
I am going to do my very best to make sure that this meeting does not last 4 hours like last week's meeting. And so, yeah, and so I'll do my best, but if I need to rein anybody in, you know, I have to. I never get any feedback about meetings ever from outside, and just in the past week, people that watch it have said, 4 hours, are you kidding me? I'll fall asleep. Well, I'm not making you watch it. Imagine being here for 4 hours, but we'll do our best. So just a few updates regarding investigation. We expect to meet with Attorney Norris in executive session at our next meeting on March 11th. On March 2nd, Brooke, Pat Maroney, Joseph, and I are going to meet with the Lancaster FinCom to present our budget. And I might not be up on the other, what's going on in the other towns in terms of folks meeting with FinCom. And has that, yes?
It already happened.
Okay.
It was the 13th.
Okay.
And so I was able to present to the select board.
Okay, thanks. What about in Stow?
Stow's coming up, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Pat, the Stow meeting, I think is
Is 20-something. I haven't received final word back on that yet.
okay. I think, yeah, I actually think that they had to do a reschedule if memory serves me right.
Okay. Just a reminder that Tri-Town meeting is March 4th. It's in Lancaster at the Prescott Building in the Nashoba room at 7 o'clock. And then another reminder that on March 25th, Dorothy Presser from MASC will be joining us to do a workshop on conducting the superintendent's evaluation, and we'll begin at 5 o'clock, and we will have stuff for us to eat. Any questions? Okay. Ivy is not here. I don't know
Yeah,
if we
she's
have.
not.
Did she send anything?
No, she didn't send a report.
Okay.
Actually, I guess her car, she was in an accident, and so her car is down, I believe, in
She's
Pennsylvania,
okay.
I think is where her car is at right now. So, yes, so she won't be here tonight. I said, just take care of you.
Yes, all right.
We're good.
She's okay?
Yeah, she's fine, yes.
The school committee.
Okay, so now we'll have the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, Leah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, no.
I have two clarifying questions.
Yes.
Number one, I think I missed the memo that I need to meet with the Stow FinCom.
No,
you don't need to. No, you don't need to.
It's just something that we've always done, and it's different in every town
community's
how
different.
it works.
Okay.
So, but if you wanted to go, check with Pat. Pat and someone from administration usually goes, and in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I know in Lancaster, that the Lancaster reps have gone as
And
well.
this is to clarify budgetary.
Yeah.
Just let them, and just to be there to represent the school committee, but it's not mandatory. It's, and again, every town does it a little bit differently.
And then the Dorothy Presser meeting, you said, is before the next school committee meeting, right? On the 25th?
Oh, the 25th. That's the second meeting in March, not the next one.
And that is not just for personnel subcommittee, that's for all of us?
Everybody, you're gonna be away, I think.
I think we might be back.
All right.
I may be away too.
Not, we won't be back. It's gonna depend
All right,
on
so
what time we're.
if,
So if both of us are gone?
then that means everybody else has to be here. So please, if there are any problems on the 25th, let me know ahead of time, because if we don't have a quorum, we can't meet.
Yeah, I
We
wouldn't
don't need a
anticipate
quorum for
anything.
Dorothy's workshop, I don't think. You don't need a quorum for the
Not
workshop.
for the workshop.
No, and then Leah, you and I can get together and I can go over what you need to do for the superintendents.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve's a veteran of.
Done it before.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Hate it.
Okay. I beg your pardon?
I said I hate it, but I've done
I
it before.
actually, I gave you an opportunity to say, I was just clearing my throat. Okay, so the superintendent's report.
So what we decided to do is because really we've had the week off, and so I thought, you know what, tonight what I'd do is I would just focus on the high school, and then I know that Dr. Maguire is going to just say a couple of words about March 6th. And he's going to chime in a couple of points as we kind of just go through and talk a little bit, in bits and pieces, kind of random. Some things have been going on there. So if you've got the report there, I'll just go through quickly with you. The NRHS campus continues to bustle with activity. Our students continue to do well with their academics and the extracurricular activities. Our staff and administration continues to work hard to support the work and their students. In terms of visibility, and this has been true since, of course, September, October type thing, both Dr. Maguire and I are over there in and out of mostly offices. But sometimes he gets the opportunity to go into classrooms. I don't have quite that same time frame to be going in and out of classrooms. My work generally is more in the offices, or as I walk through the building and I get a chance just to drop in the department chairs' offices, for example, and meet with them and such. So it's been very, very good and very, very positive, and we'll continue, of course, to do that. We do receive invitations to take in presentations or different class happenings or events, and we continue to do that as well. On January 2nd, we had a panel presentation set up for our staff there, and we held it in the auditorium, and our HR director was there, as well as legal counsel, and we had somebody from the crisis team as well, a crisis center. And so it was really a nice opportunity for staff to just engage in rich discussion, ask good questions, whether it was of our lawyer, whether it was anything to do with HR and contract things. So that was a very successful, I think, a very successful time period during that particular meeting time. The planned administrative professional development that we had planned, you'll recall that we had engaged John Doria to come in and work with our principal and the department chairs and such. And when Mr. DiDomenico left, we stopped that because we weren't sure whether we wanted to continue to move forward with it or not, because the intent really was to work with the principal and the department chairs. With that vacant leadership role, it didn't make any sense for us to continue. We had some discussion with John Doria about maybe continuing it in January, February. In January, we connected with him again, and he said, why don't we just hang tight here and see what happens once everything finishes off. So I think that's kind of, we're just in a whole pattern with that. But he certainly knows that we want him to work with whoever is in that building in that principal's role. So he's kind of just sitting out on hold. The Sunshine Fund has taken itself up again, which is fabulous to see. It was at one of the staff meetings that we attended where they were giving out all kinds of onesies. We'd like to point that out to Stavros. He got an orange one, I guess, for his little baby there. And of course, I think Tanya Rich was acknowledged because she's pregnant now and expecting, and so that was exciting. So, and so they do all kinds of really neat little things, and they provide different snacks, and for different activities, and including for students as well. So that's ongoing. So we're really glad. We really thank them for their efforts. Thank you. The Substance Abuse Task Force Committee apparently had been active for a number of years, but then kind of went into a bit of a hiatus. That has started back up again. And so that group is continuing to do some work. It's mostly leadership that's on that, and a couple of teachers. So we thank them for bringing the group back and doing some good work with that. Communication, basically the staff is reporting to me that internal communication throughout the building has definitely improved. And so we're very pleased with that. Challenge Day has been around this table before. It was postponed as a result of a snow day, but it has been rescheduled for April, so that's going to continue on. The Dean of Students is a position that we put in place this year, and our interim principal has requested that we please keep it in place into the new school year. He just feels that it's really an important role right now. We think it's an important role. The emphasis really for that position is really to work with discipline on one level, but really more about building relationships with students and such. And I think that Jamie Tucker's in there right now, and he's doing a great job with it, so we're really pleased with the efforts that we're seeing there. Student voice, I know that we've all talked around the table about that as well. We did put out on Twitter today, and I'll talk about that later on in our meeting tonight. I did meet today with a group of students who are working after our meeting yesterday, Leah and Elaine. I met with them this morning, and it was great. And they actually had come up with even better ideas in terms of a couple of areas than we had thought on yesterday, so I'm really excited to see what they come up with. So we want to thank all the kids who have come forward and met with us as groups or met with us individually, and so we want to thank them. In terms of the NRHS, I've called it the project pre-planning team, and I'm going to let Dr. Maguire speak to that, but that really is the nucleus that we're working with right now for the MSBA in terms of pre-planning of whatever a project could look like. And so I'm going to let him speak to this component here.
Sure. You met Dr. Jake Foster, who's spearheading this work with us over at the high school as we continue the work around visioning for the high school as it is now and the prospects of a new high school. This visioning group, which is consisting of a few high school teachers, some administrators, our teaching and learning team, myself, we've been really busy visiting classes, soliciting feedback from teachers and students, and implementing meetings that are focused on thinking about innovative educational programming. Dr. Foster has been on site for much of this work. He is on site at least once, if not more during the week, each week.
In and out of classrooms.
In and out of classrooms, and working extensively with department heads as well as our team. I think I mentioned a department meeting that we held at the high school last month where the teachers really were able to take the meeting and run with it with the work that he's been doing with us. The team
and
also...
the department chairs really led part of that too.
And the department chairs, yeah. The team also recently learned that we are recipients of a school excursion grant through Next Generation Learning and the Barr Foundation, which is going to work with the team in developing a visioning plan for our high school while working in concert with a model district in San Diego, California. This group is going to travel for this work in late March, and I'm going to speak to this grant and its implications for our work moving forward later this evening, but that is the article that I handed out to the school committee earlier. So I'm going to speak to that grant extensively a little bit later on this evening, but as a result of the work we're doing with Dr. Foster and this pre-planning visioning team, we were one of 6 schools to receive this grant in Massachusetts. So we're going to have the opportunity to work with a model district out in Carlsbad, California at the end of the month, and they're really going to help us set a vision for our school with some of the pre-work that we're doing right now when we get out there. So we're really excited about that.
So it's very exciting work. The leadership team, then the department chairs have begun to do some very extensive work, and they're digging deeply into this area and as we look forward, so we're very appreciative of their efforts. We've also had a couple of staff breakfasts. I know the SPED team, our district SPED team, under the guidance of Ms. DeAngelis, helped to organize a breakfast for them one morning, and we did one for them as a district central office team. We did one for them on February 14th, which seemed appropriate. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where we were at with that. The other thing that I would mention too, when we were talking, this is not listed on this, but I just want to bring these 2 things up. In talking to those students this morning, and this kind of goes back to our meeting yesterday with Elaine and Leah as we were talking about communication about the feasibility study and just the project in general. And your first reaction was, well, you'd really like people to see like the broken parts of this building and the seams or where the floors are separated completely, or where there's cracks in the walls, or the roofs that they're leaking or whatever. And then we said, and I think it was Lane, you said, or do we turn this right around? And so as I slept on it last night, I was thinking, I wonder if there's a balance in here that we can do, because you know that you need to show how badly you need something, but you really don't want it to be like that ugly piece. And so how do you bring that positivity around? When I went to speak with the students this morning, they had it all worked out. I said, well, I've got a couple of ideas, but I'd like to hear yours first. And they said, well, we think, and it was exactly what we had said, we can show them this, but we can show it in a positive way. And so they had a whole plan laid out for the storyboard for the videos. And they said, we want to show that we're the flagship school, and we're a great school, we do great things in here. And they just had such a beautiful vision when I went there this morning. It was so empowering to me. So hats off to Michael and Katie, and Grace Fiore was there as well. And she just does a great job. I had also asked her about the digital magazine, and they're definitely going to put links on it for us as well. So it was a fabulous meeting this morning with them. And the school council, I also want to thank our school council. I've mentioned that before too. But I was saying to Kathy tonight when I wrapped up the meeting with our school council, my component of it, and I turned to one of the student members and I said, any takeaways from you on this year? And he said, we have had a great year. he said it has just been a really great year. And that's one of our Bolton students, so it was really nice to hear. So that's kind of a broad overview, kind of connecting the dots for a different type of superintendent's report tonight, because there isn't a lot other than budget. I mean, and Todd said to me the other day, will we ever stop the 3-hour meeting for budget a day? No, not until it's wrapped up. So we thought tonight would be a perfect opportunity to kind of just highlight some of this. So
Super, thank you. And I know that I have said to you that, you know, since we've been meeting all year, there are little things that happen here and there. And so, but putting them all together really makes a difference. And so thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So, any questions? Joseph?
Actually, I have just a request and a comment regarding the superintendent's report. The request you brought, I wasn't going to bring this up at this point, but since you did bring it up, you're talking about some of the conditions at the high school.
Right.
And I was wondering, and I'm just throwing that out for consideration, and I hate to do this to Mr. Fraser because he's such a good guy, but is there any possibility that perhaps on some Saturday morning, the committee or anybody who's interested could get a tour of the high school so that he could highlight some of the issues?
Absolutely, it would be our pleasure. We would love to take you through that.
I would love to go and see the school on a Saturday. No kids around, just to have somebody from plant maintenance and to show us where the warts are and what it was we're dealing with.
We'll definitely,
No, I mean, I'm just thinking sometime between now and May.
Absolutely.
I want to piggyback on what Joe's saying. And I agree, it's good to just so for maneuverability.
Yeah.
But I also think there's value in being there during the school day. So, and maybe we go see the building, warts and all, but to be there when the kids are there, to see that despite some of the shortcomings in the building, just the vibe of the school and the kids, the interactions, what's going on in the classrooms, in the media center, in the cafeteria. So I would encourage folks, if at all possible, to, you know, if you have an opportunity to do that, to do it at the high school, but also at the other schools. Joseph, I know that you've taken advantage of that opportunity in Lancaster. And it can be a juggle with folks' schedules, but it's so, these are exceptional places for students to learn, and there are exceptional people working with them, and to get that vibe and to see the life of the school is just amazing.
And that's really what the students were saying today, you know, that in spite of this, like, you know, our indoor track team, you know, where do they train? Well, they train in our halls, right? Like we've said, how many times have we got just about knocked over in the hallways? Because if you get there at the right time and they're doing their training, you really, it's a dangerous thing for you. All those kinds of little things, but you know, the students said, in spite of all this, like, we've got a great attitude, we've got a great school, and here we are. And that's the approach that they're going to take with the videos that they're creating for us. Great. So, yeah, very, very good.
There was one follow-up on this. And
Sure.
And by the way, it's funny, you brought up the training in the halls for indoor. We're not the only, we shouldn't be, but we're not the only school.
No, we know that. We know that.
If you ever want to get a workout in, it's midday.
The other thing is, and again, it's one you mentioned on student voice, and this is just more of a follow-up, and it's nothing to do with actually the superintendent's report, but since you brought it up under report, I'll just throw this out very quickly. A couple of months ago, Dr. McCarthy brought up this issue regarding the statute regarding, forgive me for paraphrasing, I believe it's members of the student council, whatever, are required to be before the school committee on a semi-regular basis and what have you. And I cavalierly threw out the concept that perhaps it would be a good idea for the Commonwealth or the legislature to consider rescinding that, because MASC is reporting that most school districts don't follow it, and the few that are doing something is more in the spirit of the statute than it is actual strict adherence. So in that regard, the chair tasked me with contacting one of our legislators, which I did, and I spoke to Dean Tran's office, Senator Dean Tran. So Dean Tran represents Bolton and Lancaster, not Stow, but I figured I'd start with him. He's my legislator, so I figured I did. And I threw out the possibility that perhaps, because you know, if you go on his website, you see all the bills that he's introduced and what have you. I'm thinking, how about one to rescind? You know, how about a little less? But less is more sometimes. So I threw it out to one of his staff members, and I framed it in this manner, and I don't know if this is acceptable, but I did. I said, look, there's a lot of interest in our district from certain members of the committee and the administration to give more voice to our students. And I would say, I suggested that perhaps it might be more prudent to allow school districts at the local level to formulate their own policies on how they want to do this, as opposed to having something coming from Boston. And they said they'd look into it. So that's the way I frame it. It's more like just please just rescind the statute that is absolutely not being enforced or being followed in the Commonwealth, and let each district formulate their own policy.
Thank you,
All right.
and thanks for following up,
All right,
and
well,
that's,
thank you.
but, yeah, and it would seem, I mean, if they checked to see who was doing it to the letter, like MASC said, you know, the people are doing a variety of different things, they are sort of adapting it, and Leah will have something to speak about that shortly, so, thank you, Joseph. Yes, Leah?
I just have a quick question, and we've talked about this offline, but if you could maybe just elaborate on camera here, as we embark on this project to kind of illuminate all of the warts in this high school building, some parents are concerned that they have children who are going to school in a sick building, and my son included. So can you just help us understand how we're going to be managing this building in between here and there?
Well, I think, first of all, I think Dr. Maguire had a great answer for you the other day, and I'd ask him to re-articulate that, and then I'm going to go back after it.
Sure. So I think I mentioned that if you take a look at our 2015 NEASC accreditation report, you know, it is an accredited high school, and a big part of that report has to do with physical facilities, and part of the standards associated with that are that the facility is, we were accredited. So if there were major warning signs in 2015 or issues, we would have been put on warning or not received accreditation. So if we were in an unsafe building. So, and with that 2015 report comes recommendations, and every 2 and then every 5 years, we have to come up with progress reports and report out on those things. And it being 2020, we are at that 5-year check-in point with them. So we wouldn't be an accredited institution if we were in an unsafe building, number one. So that is the case in terms of, the accreditation report is on the website, and it was written in 2015. So we will have an update and then a review with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges again this year with the 5-year, and then we'll be gearing up again for another accreditation visit, as it's a decennial piece every 10 years. So that's, people can rest assured that children are not going to school every day in an unsafe building, because that's why we have, accreditation processes and why we participate in that process with NEASC.
And I think just as a follow-up, part of the issue, and this came up when the folks from MSBA came through the tour in December of last year, the building looks good because it's so well kept and it's clean. And I think that Rob Frieswick, again, has just done yeoman's work in terms of putting all the preventative action plans in place and whatnot. And so I think we feel very comfortable with that building right now. But the bottom line is, every time that something, goes wrong, it's not a $5,000 or $10,000 ticket. And that's what I was saying with the students this year. I said, if you think about it, we put $300,000 into a leach field, basically, so we could flush toilets. It's like simple stuff, And our alarm system, I've said this before, for our heating system, we can't get parts for it anymore. It's antiquated. So when the heating system is down, the alarm doesn't go off anymore. And so we might not. So then you're looking at even possibly greater damage done to the building with frozen pipes or whatever. So, I think that we feel very comfortable, and we would be first to say that we didn't, and we're not there right now.
Thank you.
Mike?
I just want to thank you for providing this kind of update, as it were. I'm sure the rest of the committee appreciates it. I'm sure the community really appreciates it. So thank you. I wonder if you can provide a little bit more detail about the communication piece. It says staff have reported that internal communication has improved. Can you maybe elaborate what kind of internal communication, and maybe how we know that
And that's really much more narrative from teachers as I'm walking through the hallways and they stop and talk to me and that kind of thing. We haven't done any deep dive on this or anything like that. It's what teachers are telling me as I'm walking through the hallway. Just want you to know, and they're saying things like, I just want you to know, like, we feel really happy, or we're feeling really good about things. We feel that our communication is much better right now with our main office or what have you. So it's more that type of a narrative than any deep dive that we took.
Can I?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll just point out too, I think that the work that Dr. Foster is doing with the high school and bringing him to department meetings and faculty meetings, he's done a lot of the communication about this MSBA process, what it means, walking the entire staff through the modules, kind of like he did with this committee a couple of weeks ago. So I know the feedback from the staff during those meetings, they were very appreciative to know what the process is, to be a part of the process. So I think that's been a big communication piece around the process moving forward with this visioning and the way in which he's working with department heads first. And then those department heads are then sending that same consistent message into their department, so that when they come into meetings, whole school, everyone's in the feeling as though they're in the know. And I've been at those meetings with him, so I've certainly gotten that feedback from staff.
And I think the other thing too is, I mean, when we think about the health and the climate, and by the way too, the climate committee is still in action over there, and it has been for years, and it still is in action as we talk tonight. I still get emails too from folks, or for example, even after like the breakfast, we want you to know how much we appreciated this. And they're just such a good staff. They just really are a great staff, and I think they've been incredibly resilient, and I think that they've risen to where they needed to go and what they needed to do, and I think that they deserve all the credit in the world. Of course, I say this, and we've got a staff member here, it just dawned on me. So it's like, I'm talking about you, and you're sitting right here. But it is, it's a great building.
He's blushing,
It's a great building, and we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? I know you're very sensitive on time.
No, we're doing good. We're doing good. Just keep it going.
It occurred to me, Dr. Maguire, when you mentioned Dr. Foster's work, is there going to be an opportunity where that data will be compiled and then shared out to the school?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this is very, very kind of that pre-planning, and as you heard him mention a couple weeks ago, I think we're ahead of the game in terms of this process, and because he's so informed, and I think he's so seasoned with the process, he knows with all of this pre-planning, we'll have so much information to then share out. And I think even when I talk about this work that we're going to do in San Diego, that's all about the pre-planning that we're then going to come back with so much, hopefully, to share and then move forward.
And I think too, there's a certain level of excitement. For example, we had another staff member in California. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Last week, and she toured the Vista High School,
High Tech,
right? You're going to Vista, the High Tech, and she was so excited. So she sent me all kinds of stuff in an email and tons of pictures, and you won't believe what I saw, and blah blah blah. And I saw her today, and that's excitement. She said, this is just such a good thing for us. We're in such a good place. So, and I remember, Leah, you mentioned at one point in time, it would be interesting to see, the effects of the building, if that comes to pass on the staff. And it couldn't have come at a better time, quite frankly, because all of this stuff, it has to be done. The work has to be done. They're pulling together and doing exactly what they need to do. I mean, and when you ask the question about what we see, part of the work here is creating the educational profile and the educational plan, which is mandated for us through the MSBA. So when that's compiled, we'll be bringing that forward, because that will be submitted to MSBA. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will move on to the Hale PTO donation, and
here comes Pat.
Okay.
Right on cue.
I have a letter from Kyle Grady, the principal at Hale Middle School. It says, "Dear school committee members, thank you for your service to our communities. Please consider accepting a donation from the Stow Parent-Teacher Organization in the amount of $3,800. This will cover the cost of 10 Galaxy tablets. These tablets will be used within our computer science digital literacy classroom, the after-school coding club, the robotics club, and our video production club. We are incredibly grateful to have an amazing cooperative relationship with our PTO, and this is just one example of the many ways to support our schools. Again, thank you for your service to our communities."
Thank you. Can we have a motion?
Sure, I move to accept the donation to Hale Middle School from the Stow Parent-Teacher Organization in the amount of $3,800 to be used to purchase 10 Galaxy tablets.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Moving right along.
And I have a letter from the principal, Sean O'Shea, from the Mary Rowlandson Elementary School. And he says, "Dear members of the school board, please accept this letter of request to receive a gift donation made to the Mary Rowlandson Elementary School. A gift donation in the amount of $500 has been offered to the Mary Rowlandson School by ExxonMobil Lancaster Racing Mart. The gift has been offered to support the areas of math and science. This gift is generous and appreciated by the school. Thank you for your consideration.
Can I have a motion?
I move to accept the donation to the Mary Rowlandson Elementary School from the ExxonMobil Lancaster Racing Mart in the amount of $500 to support the areas of math and science.
Second.
All in favor?
Was that Joe or Mike?
Joe second. In favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so the next item is the school committee goals update, and I passed out a copy of our goals, and I think this item will replace the report out. So if you want to speak to anything you've done with the goals. So we set these at the beginning of the year. We did a survey during our summer retreat, and so these are the goals that we had established. The policy subcommittee will complete policy review and bring the policies to the school committee for their review and approval, and that has been completed. The new member orientation and the orientation to the school committee manual, that was part of the orientation this year. School committee will review the district improvement plan annually for alignment with the district mission, vision, and core values. And we did that, and that will be continue of our practice as we do our workshop every year. We have not done this yet, to evaluate the new member orientation. I think as we get past the budget
season.
Yes, we're going to have a deluge of things. And I know that the personnel subcommittee, a part of their charge is to conduct an annual evaluation of the school committee manual. I know that that has been superseded by goals around communication, but have you guys talked about the plan for doing that? Again, recognizing the work you're doing with communication.
Is it okay if I speak to that? I think one of the things we talked about in our last meeting was considering future revisions to the manual with regards to the calendar and town representation.
Okay.
So as we kind of move away from visiting the communication plan, I think we'll be moving towards that for our next few meetings.
Great. Could you speak to the communication plan now? Because even though we didn't articulate it at the time, it has emerged as a major part of the work that you guys are doing.
I can do it as part of the report, or I can do it now?
No, I want to sort of put everything together so we can not do the reports.
Oh, okay, sure.
But it's like, you guys have been working on it, and so it is like a goal.
Yeah, so the committee met a couple times independently to kind of review the, and chime in whenever you like, the communication plan for the district. And we sort of evaluated what we felt was there, what we felt was needed, and then we kind of brought those two together. And we basically identified the difference between a managerial communication plan and a strategic communication plan. We then brought the superintendent in. We had some really rich conversations about strategic communication and how, what that looks like, the attributes of strong communication, and what that looks like to faculty, to families, to community. I think we had some really nice conversations. And I think the plan moving forward, and you can certainly speak to this, is to, and I think that you've shared this out with Dr. Maguire as well, the results of these conversations.
Absolutely.
Is to sort of adopt some of those new findings for the communication plan moving forward.
Sounds great.
And if I can just speak to, I think it was really, I think Elaine, you did a nice job of saying, when you take a look at the plan, you can go check, check, check. I think we are at the level where we're wanting to go a little deeper. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
And I would agree with his articulation of rich conversation. I felt it was very rich. I thought it was an awesome meeting.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay, thank you. in the area of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just
No, no,
I just
no.
wanted to add that one of the things that came out of that meeting was part of strategic communication is actually grouped around a content area, not necessarily like regular updates in communication.
Mhm.
And so we talked about what some of those big themes might be, and the MSBA actually
MSBA
emerged as
emerged.
one. So I think you're going to see a communication plan for the MSBA through funding the feasibility study at town meeting. And that will be sort of an outcome of the work that we've been doing.
Super.
And I think to add to that, I think we've already started to see the early stages of that.
Exactly.
In the past few weeks.
Good, thank you. And I think that when we started out and set that as a goal, we were looking at what was established as the communication plan, but I want to acknowledge the work that you guys have done, really having, really analyzing it and making it better. So it's not just something that exists on paper, but that has some practical application and value for the district. So thank you for your work in that. With regard to member relations, one of our goals was to conduct a self-evaluation, which we did last June, and I don't think we had done it before in accordance with policy BAA, but that can become a part of the June workshop and looking at to take a survey of sorts before the workshop and then look at the results at the workshop. With regard to financial strategic planning and fiscal management, talked about in-servicing regarding the district's long-term financial strategic plan, constituencies involved in budget development, and how the school committee presents and advocates for the budget. So that's under superintendent, and I know Pat and I know Steve has been involved in, just in terms of the orientation. One of the orientations to the budget was through budget and warrant. Correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know if you were Pat.
Well, you said I.
Well, and I think
what she said.
I think too, I don't know, for me, quite frankly, this budget, I mean, in terms of process and in terms of this, and Steve, I don't want to steal your thunder, so I apologize for this, but I think because we've worked together for a number of years now, going 4 years now, in our third really big budget, I think that we kind of all know where the money's at. We know what to do. And I think we are able to explain it much more articulately than we have maybe 3 years ago, for example, where you didn't know where every single line was. We're in a very different place, I think, this year. Sure. And so I think it was just a much smoother process for us. I speak for us, but I don't know about the school committee, But
I think it's been a very smooth process as well.
I think so.
I can remember the first year with certain people who kind of like deep dived into like every number, but we kind of the responsibility for putting it together is the superintendent's, and we just kind of supervise the process and make sure things are going along.
And the goal is ultimately that the members of the committee understand the process and all the moving parts, and that I think this was the first year we gave the new members an orientation to the process.
Try to explain some of the
exactly.
more abstruse things in the budget to how things are done.
I think too, every month we've given the update, since all the way along. So I think that I look back and I think that this school committee that's sitting around this table right now is probably the most informed in terms of every single month you're getting something, and that wasn't always the case. And so I think that I give all kinds of credit and kudos to previous school committees who put us on this track that we're on now. So it's not a surprise that you get it the week before you're supposed to vote it in, and you've got an idea. Or like even sending out the email that I did yesterday saying, okay, here's where we're at now. And so I think we've worked really hard to try to make sure that everybody has an understanding. And then we always offer, if you need additional meetings, or we're always open to that too. But you might not feel that need either.
Thank you. So then the next goal is under community relations, and that first bullet, school committee will review district's comprehensive communication plan. I think Mike and Elaine spoke to that, and that goal has expanded with the personnel subcommittee, so we look forward to hearing more about the specifics of that. And then the second bullet about the policy subcommittee reviewing the policy for citizens' comments. I spoke about this right at the beginning of the year. We were ready to move on this, and then was reminded by our legal counsel and MASC that there are implications for that based on a ruling, I think last year, Spalding versus the Natick School Committee. And so our legal advisors and MASC will be giving us proposed guidelines
and direction
for that. So there'll be more coming from that. And then conduct of meetings. School committee will convene an ad hoc committee to make recommendations regarding how to make the school committee meeting conducive to productive discussions and decision making. Any updates?
Well, I will tell you this, that
Yes.
Mary and I did meet back in the fall,
Yep.
and some of Mary's recommendations have already been implemented. I have to say, I do think that from where we were last May, and I don't know, maybe the jury's still out on this, but I do think that what Mary suggested regarding the reconfiguration of the room and the chairing and the chairs and what have you, I think has been most conducive to a more affable environment for people. Nobody just feels pushed in the back there. But what ended up happening was we were supposed to meet a second time to accept minutes and to either continue with the work or to disband the committee. But we had some scheduling issues last fall. So technically, we're still in the existence process. So I'm going to have to set up a date for Mary and I to meet again sometime in the near future to make any further recommendations.
Well, we're going to need some. We're going to have 3 additional members.
Yeah, and I was thinking that too. But I was thinking, maybe we just keep it going for a little bit longer until the members are on. So.
Yes,
Mary. So I just want to thank Alita too, because as we talked about the table configuration and came in, boom, the tables are closer together. There are more chairs here. And even when the parents came in, we had chairs for the people, and we could even get more chairs if needed. So a couple of the things that we thought of, boom, they just happened. But they didn't just happen. Thank you, Alita. So that's the beginning. And we can, as we have more members too, I keep looking around the table and thinking, okay,
what's this going to look like?
Where are they going to be? How are we going to place them? And make sure that we still all have room, because there's room for you, 3 new people coming, but we just have to figure that out.
Thank you. Did you want to say something? No. Okay. So another goal that has emerged, and I think it was through our examination of policies, particularly policy JIB with regard to student voice and decision making. And so Leah, and I know that there's several of us who have been invited to things at the high school involving student voice or watching presentations, but I'm going to let Leah speak to some recent initiatives through policy about, in particular, student representation to the school committee.
Yeah, so one of the things that we heard pretty loud and clear at the beginning of this school year is that students didn't really have a visible avenue to communicate with the school committee. And so in the spirit of the law that Joe was talking about, we are considering ways that we can leverage that student seat on the school committee and perhaps make them that avenue that students are seeking so that they can communicate with us regularly and it can become a two-way street. So Kathy and I had our subcommittee meeting today at the high school with Principal Codianne and Ms. Early, who is the student leadership advisor at the high school. And we shared ideas on how we might make that position one in which the student body can kind of be present with us and exercise their voice. And so she had all kinds of great ideas, and she's going to run a few of them through her student council and hopefully implement that position by September, October of next year.
And I do want to add that Leah brings a lot of experience with this to the table, and she was sharing some of the things that they do at her high school with what they call it, a community council.
Yeah, so Mary is actually the architect.
Your name came up.
One of the architects of this system that still looms at Hudson High School. So we call ourselves a community council, but it is a student council, and it basically is structured exactly like Nashoba is, where there are class officer liaisons that participate with us. The body is a school-wide school improvement entity, charged with assessing and improving school climate. And so we were just talking back and forth, Kim and I were, about all the things that our community council does to try to gauge the student body, to be a voice for them, and then how one of our executive board members is actually a representative on the Hudson School Committee. And whereas I love what Ibby does, she gives this wonderful presentation of all the amazing things. Ours doesn't do that, and so we're looking to perhaps add that to their job description. Kim was saying that perhaps Ibby's position can be added to, and that person can be that conduit to the student body.
Mike?
You said that we're hoping to get these implemented September, October. Does that mean that that would be in time to maybe assign those, I guess, new responsibilities to the rising student rep?
Yes.
For the upcoming school year?
Definitely.
Great.
So we didn't feel like we should be changing it midstream.
Right. Just the October thing threw me off because...
Yeah, so the student body doesn't, so their student council at Nashoba High School is a volunteer organization, so it's not elected, whereas the class officer positions, I believe, are. And so this student council is a volunteer organization with kind of willing student leaders, which is kind of nice because then everybody can participate, it's not exclusive. And so then within that group that comes together in September, they then elect within their executive board, their vice president. And so one of the members of that exec board could become the student who sits with us every other week and can provide a really, a vetted, but also a complete report on how the students are doing and how they're feeling and what they would like us to know. And then we can communicate here with the student present and provide feedback, provide questions, and they can bring it then back to the student body and to Ms. Early, who's their advisor, to kind of keep the conversation going around.
So that's, and the conversation will continue. I think that Steve and Kim were really interested in a lot of the ideas that Leah shared from her experience, just in terms of doing a survey, just to see what's going on for kids. And they were, skeptical about doing a survey. And tell what you do in Hudson.
Yeah, so in Hudson, we try to do kind of periodic surveys of the student body just to say, how's it going? What are you feeling? What are you seeing? And so we were talking today that basically you just make a QR code and you can, put it on all the lunch tables, and the kids have Snapchat, almost all of them, right? So like they just snap the QR code, and it brings them to a Google form where it basically says, we were saying how we could, and this is basically based upon what you were saying yesterday, Elaine, we could say, what do you love about Nashoba High School? Like, what's awesome there? Because there's so many awesome things. Now, how would you like to see them improved, right? So they have to provide both sides of the coin, and then the student leaders would be in charge of collating all that information, looking for trends, and then, in addition to the faculty advisor input, they could bring it to the principal, they could bring it to us. But it's just one way to kind of get the pulse periodically and it makes students feel like they have some skin in the game, so to speak. Like in Hudson, one of the things they didn't like is that there was no water filter. So the community council went about raising, $1,200, I think it was, and we worked with facilities to get it installed for free. And it was totally student driven. So just like silly, all the way from silly things to really big things.
I just want to add too, it's so wonderful to hear the community council is still going on. And when you talked about the fact that it's similar to a student council, it is. Although the representation is proportional to the number of people who are being represented. For example, there are many more students on community council than there are faculty. And so everyone sitting around the round table is an equal member. And so you have faculty and you have students, but because there are more students than faculty, which makes so much sense, students have more weight in terms of decision making. And so that's pretty exciting, and that's been going on for a long time. Could it be 2001?
Yeah. Was it in the old school? Yeah.
Yes.
And so, that philosophy was actually brought into the construction of the new high school, right? Building spaces that this student leadership, like these petri dishes, could really thrive. So,
well, it's very exciting, and I think that again, we had this germ of dissatisfaction with the way something was, and Joe took the point with the state to get rid of it, but something really wonderful can come for it. So it's very exciting, and I appreciate your taking the leadership on this, and look forward to hearing more about it. Okay?
Great.
Thank you. Anything else with regard to our goals? I think we're doing a pretty good job. Yeah. But that's me, I'm biased. Okay, so at this time, we have the DECA field trip cost update. I would like to invite Stavros to come and speak with us. Thank you so much for coming.
It was great to be here. I know the fourth graders are long gone, but it's good to see that I have the new crop coming.
Oh, new crop coming.
There's some good presenters. I can use them tomorrow when we go on my field trip. So I'm glad to be here. I know you guys discussed it at the last meeting, and I know there's some questions that came about from the trip. So I can talk a little bit about it.
Why don't you give us a little bit of a broad overview. By the way, thank you so much for the email with all of that really, I think that probably answered most of the questions, to be honest with you, but I think it's really important that you're here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Problem.
And thank you for all the work you do with that organization. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. We feel that kind of pride that we felt tonight with these younger people, with what you're doing with your students.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
we thank you so much, Stavros.
So just I'll try to keep it brief because I know we don't have too much time. Nashoba DECA is the biggest group in Nashoba now. I think we had 203 members this year.
Wow.
So every year, I've been here this is my 10th year in the district, and when I first started, I used to beg kids, because I was a part-time teacher, and I was the only business teacher, and I used to, please join DECA, please, because I did it in high school, and I know the effect that it had on me, and how it led me down a career path of business. And so we're done begging, because like every year, we've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and the kids really find it useful, and I know we've sent a lot of kids to business school now, which makes me really proud, and my counterpart, Taryn Grigas, really proud. So 203 kids is great. It's a lot to manage. So as you can see, like the costs have kind of gone up and up and up every year, because I'd say we've had growth of about 20 to 30 students every single year. So we started with my first year, I think we had 20 students, and we were up to 203. So want me to talk about the DECA season a little bit?
Yep. Yes,
we
please.
start off with a mock competition in December. And I know Kathy and some school committee members in the past have come down and judged our fake competition to get us ready for our very first competition, which is held at UMass Lowell in January. So that's just a one-day quick event. The cost of that one was only $50, and that was mostly just for lunch and transportation. After UMass Lowell, we lost about 50 of our students that didn't move on and didn't qualify for the next round. So we had about 140 or so qualify for state. States is the best of the best. So we're going up against the 8 DECA districts. And they send the top 40 groups in each category in DECA. All in all, there's about 3,300 kids at the conference that we head to tomorrow. So it's a really big event. It used to be held in different various spots around the state, and now we're in Boston, and that's pretty much the only place we fit. So we started off as in the Marriott Copley Hotel, which is a really huge hotel, and now we've even expanded out of that. So we're actually staying in the Sheraton this year. We got bumped a couple weeks back, and the Sheraton is just right next door. We're still connected to the Prudential Center. So DECA uses the Sheraton, the Westin this year too, and the Marriott Copley. And we do all our big meetings at the Heinz Convention Center. So kids will present their business plans, their marketing plans, their community service projects. They really compete in a lot of different avenues. So pretty much, if you're interested in cars or in fashion, there's always something that kids can kind of go towards what they're passionate about and select a project. And my classes are very project-based learning, so it's not a lot of kids saying this is boring because they chose what they were doing. So there's a lot of ownership, and kids really tend to like it. The trip itself, should I move on to questions now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions for me. I know the cost was $430. I'll briefly tell you guys. I think, did everyone get a copy of the email? I have some here if anyone needs one. The registration was $240, which includes the use of all those areas that I told you guys that we're competing in. So the kids compete in the Heinz Convention Center, and we use a giant ballroom there for our big events, the award ceremonies, guest speakers, opening ceremony. The hotel is another pretty big cost. It was $125 per student, but that's for 2 nights at the Sheraton, which, you know, it's not too bad when you divide it out. Transportation's so last year the cost of this trip was $415. I'd say we went to $430 this year. Because we have more kids and our fundraising dollars got stretched thinner and thinner, but also our transportation has gotten up quite a bit in the last couple of years. I think changing. I don't know. I don't know why, but I know our bills that way have gotten much higher. We also do apparel for the kids. So tomorrow when we go into Boston, we all wear a DECA quarter zip and a DECA t-shirt. The chaperones have helped us keep an eye on all our kids because we're all wearing the same thing. So it's kind of genius, but for the kids, they really love it because, you know, we look like a team and we're not just a bunch of individuals showing up to a hotel. So came up to $430 this year. So that we've had a couple big sponsors in the past, and Clinton Savings Bank has been a huge partner of ours for pretty much all 10 years that I've been here. They've always been our biggest, most helpful sponsor. Last year they donated $2,500, and anytime that I run into a problem, they're always there to help. They're always judging for us. They've been a huge help. Last year, we were able to recruit in AIS, which I think you guys are really familiar with. They donated $2,000 to our program, and they're an awesome, great organization that also brings in judges. So, like, we have 2 really great partners. We haven't got their donations so far this year, so we're a little bit behind on actually getting those in. All in all, I guess the real story is that we're getting bigger and bigger, and fundraising is kind of not growing along with the growth of our program. So the costs are definitely going up. I can tell you that I was one of those students that kind of needed some financial assistance when I was younger, so I'm really sensitive to that, and we always kind of keep some funds aside for students that need it. So for states, I send out a survey to all the kids, and I say, you know, give me your t-shirt size for when we order all these things, you know, parents' email so we can contact them and all that. And then the last one is, do you need financial assistance? And there really isn't, like, you know, there's no show me tax returns or anything crazy like that. It's just, do you need it? Sure, that's it. That's all we really, if you ask, you get it. And I usually just have a quick conversation with the student to kind of talk it over, and I think we're helping, you know, between 8 to 10 kids this year for the state trip. So we tend to save most of our fundraising dollars for the nationals trip. So we don't know how many kids are going to be. I'll check back in a couple days. I can tell you how many kids will qualify for nationals because we leave tomorrow. But we tend to save a lot of our fundraising dollars for that trip because that one's really expensive. We're, you know, going away for 5 days. The trip this year is to Nashville, Tennessee. So you'll have another trip request from me really soon. So if you guys have any questions.
No, that's terrific. I think you did a great job. Thank you.
So the final cost of $430, is that based on the anticipation of the $4,500 from your sponsors or not?
No, so if I don't have the money, I can't. I've already kind of paid for the trip already, so I didn't have it at the time, so I couldn't use it to defray the cost.
Okay. And so if you get those donations, those will go into your fundraiser for like nationals.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to share I know we were interested in the breakdown and the cost and everything, and this may be another discussion for another time, but I guess my concern is that this is an activity based on a curriculum program, and it seems like $430. This is not, I'm just mad at the universe, not you, because you're doing a great job. And again, the question for me is, how do we support this opportunity without asking our families to pay that much. And I think the robotics team is in a similar situation.
Exactly
so, and again, it's a curricular program. Our students are good enough to be in these, the local, statewide, national competitions, and it's costing them a lot of money. So I would like to put this in our parking lot to look at. I mean, the breakdown, it is, as we say, it is what it is, but I'm looking at that D buses is and don't we have our contract with them? They can't help us out? I mean, I'm just being rhetorical here, but anyway, the idea is, get a voucher, I don't know. But anyway, we want the kids to have these opportunities, but to have a larger discussion about it at some point, because I do think this is they honor us so much by the work that we do, and we're so proud of them. And clearly, you have built this program from the ground up, and you have a lot to be proud of, and such a great guy and teacher for the kids to work with. We got to look at this.
Yeah, I would totally agree, because I don't think it's fair either, and for multiple reasons and different reasons for both organizations. I kind of see DECA on one spot and robotics in another.
But robotics just lost a major sponsor this year. And so
it's kind of like you can't count on sponsors.
Yes.
I think that's really the message that we need to look at. And Pat and I have had this conversation for the past couple of years. So I would agree.
Okay.
I think it's time for us to have a different discussion.
So I'm going to close this discussion in 4 minutes. So Mary, if you have questions.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming tonight, because answering our questions is very helpful. And I also think informing the committee about what DECA is and what it does. I just have one idea for you. You probably thought of this before, but your most important resource, besides yourself, you students.
Yes.
And so to have a component in the curricula, the fundraising aspect that everybody would have to use the brain power, to use the contacts of those young people, that this becomes part of the course. I just think they can do incredible things.
I agree.
And so they might ask, an uncle who works for some, but just to consider that, that's your best resource.
I completely agree,
Okay.
because we could do much more successful things that way than a little fundraiser selling donuts somewhere.
Right, and so have it be part of what they're doing forward, making those connections, networking, and if they have to do like 5 or 10, and just see what comes out of that. You never can't tell.
Yeah, we have a big officer team this year, and we have about 9 officers on our team, and then we have a mentor team too. That's new this year, where we have kids that help underclassmen with their projects. And we brought them all in, and we had this big fundraising. Let's go, let's do this, and we assigned 2 businesses to each kid, and hasn't gone so well. This has been a rough fundraising year for sure. We're feeling the effects of it.
But just think
and I've been out for paternity leave, so we're kind of like a little bit behind on getting some money in from like the recurring relationships we've had in the past.
But I do think that Kathy's point is well taken. I'm very respectful of exactly what you're saying, and I understand that. But there's a piece of me too that philosophically struggles with the fact, like I'm uncomfortable with the fact that you might, and I'm not saying that you do feel like this, but you might feel that you need to justify this or justify the fundraising when this is such a tremendous program that's servicing 203 of our children. There's that's more than some of our courses service, when you think about it, so I really think it's time for us to take a different look at funding and not be so heavily reliant on this. She says tonight is just going to talk about the budget, but I mean, the bottom line is I think it should fall more under our umbrella.
So we will take it up.
Yeah, I put it on the parking lot.
Okay. Stavros, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for all you do.
Good luck. Good luck.
We'll be sending good vibes your way.
We'll give you an update.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the MSBA update.
Sure. So we're going to talk feasibility study in a minute here. So I'm going to have Pat come to the table as well. And I know that we've got a slide that we're going to put up. But before we go into that, we're going to, and if you can cue up our video there for our little friends in the chirping, that would be great. Or I don't know if Todd can help you with that. One of the interesting components of all of this is the outreach to our staff. And when you're walking through the hallways and talking to staff about, what things that they're experiencing or whatnot, and like Joe McCarthy and I had a great conversation this morning, kind of based on a very long email he sent me. Well, one of the emails that came in, I said, do you mind if I share this with school committee, because I just, there was a piece of me, and I thought, you can tell she's an English teacher, because there's a piece of me that says, it was so well written that I was bursting out laughing, and yet there was a piece of me that was so sad. Mm-hmm. And so I said to her, do you mind if I share this with the school committee? So I'm going to read you this first, and then we'll go through a couple of little clips here to give you a flavor. So this is from Maura Bailey, and she said, my name is Maura Bailey, and I teach English in room 215 at the high school. I just wanted to drop you a note to provide reason number 736, I'm not sure where she got that number, as to why a new building is imperative for our school community. Every year at approximately the end of March, the entire English hallway is overrun by bird nests in the walls. The birds break into the walls from the internal courtyard between the English and history halls, and they peck through the cement between the bricks, where they build nests in the walls. When the eggs hatch a few weeks later, our classes are constantly serenaded by these baby birds, which is sweet for about 2 days. However, I never realized how loud a nest of baby birds is. And by the time the birds are ready to fledge the nest, the chirping is consistent background noise, which is distracting at best and entirely unhealthy. The nests exist above the hard ceiling in our classrooms, but in the spring, when it gets warm, our classrooms develop a pungent odor that has to be from the fecal matter the birds produce, and I'm sure that there are bird carcasses in there as well. And we don't get only one nest per season. Once one nest fledges, we can be assured that there will be at least 2 more cycles of nests before the end of the school year. She said our custodial staff has gone above and beyond over the past few years to try and prevent the birds from breaking into the building. They've used all kinds of cement patches to attempt to block access, but the birds are smart and they're motivated to find a safe place to raise their babies. And while the idea of reading Shakespeare or Morrison to a chirping nest of baby birds might sound really appealing, I can assure you that most of the English staff would be thrilled if we didn't have to compete with them for our students' attention. And so, and she goes on a bit more, and so she and I had corresponded back and forth a bit. And so then she sent me another email, and so we won't share all of these with you, but she basically, and I'm hoping that the sound is loud enough so that you can see what this is really like in her classroom.
What was your question earlier about the health of the building?
There's a tricky balance involved here.
Clearly, it's healthy enough to raise baby birds.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying, like, that's all through MCAS, right? Like, this noise is, it's consistently there. And I think she's done it over like 1 or 2 years. So, I mean, it's not just like last season type thing. Mm-hmm. So we just need to do one more just to give you the flavor.
Later.
In one of these videos, you see the students just sitting there and they're just going about their business, and she's trying to teach, and you think, oh my goodness, you know. And so I think one of the interesting things, again, because I am at the school a lot, and I do receive like these types of emails, hey, just so you know, this is going on in this hallway and that's going on, and things stories I never would have known otherwise. So special thanks to Maura for sending this in, and to all the teachers who have sent me numerous stories about what's happening in their hallways that otherwise we wouldn't know, because you're looking really at the building itself, the facility, the cracks, the heating systems, this would never have occurred to me. So of course you know that I went right to Rob Frieswick and said, okay, and he said, yep, it's been a problem for years. And so I guess today they had a lift out there today trying to add new ways of trying to keep control of these birds. But you think about mice, or you think about that kind of thing, or hornets, and I mean, you were in my office, was it last night? And they dive bomb me here. The stink bugs and the hornets are always dive bombing me in my office. So we think about that kind of thing. We don't necessarily think about the birds, Sure. So anyway, I thought I would start with that. So thank you, Alita. If you could put up that slide now, that would be terrific. So our next step now is going to be, okay, we're in the eligibility period. We're going to look forward now to that feasibility period. I'm just going to put up a quick slide here. We had discussion at the last meeting, but you didn't really give me direction, and so I really am asking for some direction tonight. So we're just going to go through this. During the feasibility study, and I think this is maybe as much for our community as it is for us tonight, the district collaborates with the MSBA to, first of all, generate an initial space study, which we've kind of already done, quite frankly. Again, as Todd said, we're really well ahead of ourselves in this project. Document existing conditions and establish design parameters, and that's of course what the folks will do during the feasibility study time period. Develop and evaluate preliminary and final alternatives for a building project. And keep in mind, and we want to say this again, we're not under the preconceived notion that this is going to be a full building. We have to wait till the feasibility study comes back and shows us options that are available for our communities to think about. And then recommend the most cost-effective and educationally appropriate solution to the MSBA Board of Directors. And remember that they have to take several votes on this, and we have to work in tandem with them. So we do all kinds of preliminary work, and then we'll talk about like the feasibility study now, but they have to take the vote on whether we're ready for the feasibility study or not before we can actually go ahead to do it. So really what we're looking for right now is to say, okay, we need to have some funds available for us in order for us to do this. We've talked this through the last meeting as well. We explained what we've heard back from other building projects and what they've said to us. We've had lots of discussion with Jake Foster on this. So I feel that, and the number that we consistently see in all of these is basically for schools our size, around that 1.5 to around $2 million is what they suggest. And in part, remember, that's because you don't want to have to go back after and say, okay, we only afforded ourselves 1 million, but it's actually 1.3. And then to go back out. We just don't want to do that.
Sure.
And remember too that these modules all have kind of like time limits on them. And when we move into the actual eligibility period, like we're just pre that right now, that's June 1st, but then there's 270 days thereafter that we have to make sure that the funding is in place for us. We don't have to borrow it then, we just have to make sure that we've got access to it. So we are able to take this, basically go out for the funding prior to the start of the June 1st. And I know you all know this, I'm just saying this one more time out there. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've got the language, Ready Pat has been working on it, that we received from the MSBA that needs to be forwarded to the towns to go on to the warrants. So that's kind of where we're sitting tonight. I don't know, Dr. Maguire, if you've got anything else to add tonight. Did I miss anything tonight?
No, I don't think we certainly wanted to provide specifics around the community, what a feasibility study entails, and why we ask for what we're asking for in terms of the amount of work that is involved in the work that we already have begun, so that we can provide the information essential to the communities as well as MSBA that we are ready for such a project.
So when you say you're looking for direction from us, what you want us to do is to authorize an amount, a do not exceed amount.
Right, that's really what I'm looking for, is a do not exceed amount.
And so we sort of touched upon this last week, and I know MSBA had said we're looking at 1.5 to 2 million. And then I think somebody heard from a town spoke.
I think it was Mary.
Yes, that if we could keep it, do not exceed 1.5. I don't know if we've heard from other towns with regard to that. The other thing I think to keep in mind is that when this vote goes forward, that it requires the approval of all 3 towns.
That's correct.
So, just as I mentioned when we were talking about the budget and coming in at 3%, that I think we have to, nobody wants to be caught short, but when you get a message like that, I think it would behoove us to seriously consider it. My concern would be going for do not exceed amount of $2 million and then not having it pass and having to come back. But why don't we take a few minutes? I'd like to hear what folks think. Steve?
Okay, first of all, I think if we do get a new high school, we already have a use for the old high school. We can turn it into an aviary.
Thank you.
However, there was one thing last time that I was not 100% sure of my understanding. The borrowing for the study, does that ultimately get rolled so that it ultimately gets rolled into the total amount of borrowing for whatever the construction evolves, so that it's not a long-term commitment for the 3 towns to say no more than $2 million. It is a number that we're saying not to exceed $2 million, but it's also has to be understood that this money will ultimately be rolled into the total cost of whatever we do and will not be a separate borrowing, bonding, however you want to call it, so that it will not impact the total towns, each of the towns' borrowing levels once the borrowing or once the commitment to do the construction is done. It'll be rolled into that. So it's not a separate issue that will be separately bonded. It's something that will have the bond. In other words, if we bond the $1.5 million or $2 million now, that will be paid off relatively quickly with funds that are allocated or funds that are bonded for the ultimate construction costs. And I think that's important for all of the towns to understand.
Is that correct, Pat? Is that
yes, ultimately that is what would happen.
Okay.
But we also want to go forward. We said this last time too, and I bet you, Pat, this is on the tip of your tongue, ready to say too. And Steve, you're absolutely right. The concern would be if we do nothing, if we end up doing nothing at all on this project, then, and you know that, then, and we've said that around this table, then you do own that. But you're absolutely right. And I think that we really recognize the critical importance of going out and reaching out into our communities and letting them know all this kind of information, not just around this table here. And that was a discussion that we had the other day, yesterday actually. And that's why the students are, preparing their work right now to help support us with this. And, we talked today about the fact that none of the students sitting around me today are going to benefit from this, and they all know that. They say, we're doing this for the next generation of learners. They know that.
Sure.
So I think that, and I think one of the other things, and you're not alluding to this at all, but I'd like to bring it up right now, because we had this discussion yesterday, touched on it a little bit in the meeting for communication, is the cost associated with potentially not doing anything. And I think that that's something that our communities really need to think upon as well. So for example, if that roof needs to be done, like completely done, you're looking at millions. If that whole system, the HVAC system, needs to be completely redone, that's not even $100,000 project. Like all of these projects are going to be huge, and then you're still going to be left with a 70 or an 80-year-old building, you know, so there's that piece. And you know, I've said this before too, you know, you have to keep in mind that 61 applications were made this year for new buildings through MSBA, and only 11 were put forward. We were one of the 11. I'm pretty sure that if we turn this down or don't go through with this, I'm not so sure that they'd be quick to look at us again for another, I don't know, couple of years or a decade. Like, I think you really need to think of that, because there's a build-up in the state.
I think it's about money right now.
Oh,
I totally agree. Mike wanted to say something.
I mean, I agree it's about money, but I also want to speak to Steve's point and what you just said, because I was just about to say it. I think the success that we meet with the towns is going to be directly dependent on their level of being informed. Because I think if you put yourself in the perspective of a typical community member, they don't know the details that we know. Even we don't know all of the details that you know.
Right.
And so I think they're that much further removed. I don't know if I thought this or said this last week, but when Dr. Foster came and gave us that process overview, there was that one slide that put everything into context, that this is the first in many, many steps that has to happen. And so I keep thinking, what does the average community member know or not know, and what would they need to know? And so, like you said, the more information you can provide the communities with, the towns with, in a concise and kind of palatable way, I think that that's going to increase their level of comfort with deciding what the right move is. I don't know if at the town meetings we can provide residents with sort of a packet, a handout, something that summarizes, here are some sort of like the facts, like you said, that statistic about 11 out of however 60 some districts, this process overview, the cost, the cost of not doing this. I think all of that is really critical, especially if we want to increase our chances for getting this passed from all three towns.
Steve?
I think that everybody is familiar and should be familiar with the idea that I now have a car that's 8 to 10 years old. Things are beginning to go on it. So the question is, am I going to keep putting good money after bad, which in our case is similar to the high school that's now 50 to 60 years old, or am I going to go out and buy a new car? Now, whether I'm going to buy a totally new car or whether I'm just going to buy a newer car, knowing that once again I'm going to face some of these issues sooner rather than later, this is something that everybody can understand.
But I think we're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we all understand that this is going to be a major sell, and that to both your points, it's got to be organized in a way so that people really understand all the moving parts. I think for today, we're not doing that plan today, and I know Brooke will talk about what's in the works to build the level of communication and information that people need. We need to give direction about the amount of money that we want to authorize for the feasibility study. Leah?
So just two quick things. Correct me if I'm wrong. If we go ahead with whatever construction project they recommend in the feasibility study gets rolled into the larger bond, which means it gets partially.
That's exactly what he just said.
Partially reimbursed.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly right.
So that's very important information.
Sure.
And it could be 35%, it could be 45%, we're not sure yet. But a lot of that cost will be defrayed by the MSBA.
Yes.
The second thing I would say is that because we're asking for, if we were to say 1.5 to 2 million, or not to exceed $2 million, we really do mean not to exceed. And it's in all of our interests as residents and taxpayers to keep that cost as low as possible. What is not in our interest is to find out that it costs 1.7 million, and then we have to go back through the political process. We would have to have another special election that then costs us more money.
Yeah.
I think that putting the language in to not exceed $2 million is responsible government, and that we are the trustees of that money, and we will make sure that the cost is as responsible as we can make it. as much as the market will allow.
Other, Elaine?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what would your feasibility study get you? It gets you all the way to schematics for multiple options of building projects.
That's important for
And
folks.
and when I think about that, I'm like, $2 million for, let's say, 3 schematic level design plans for options, that doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And my concern is that if you cut corners in the planning in order to come in under a predetermined amount of money, that filters into the actual construction, which filters into problems a lot longer down the road. And I'd rather get the planning done really well, than try to hit some target that is underneath maybe what reality is. We don't really know.
Just as a very quick point of clarification, would the language be not to exceed the total cost, or would it be not to exceed the amount divided up by the 3 towns?
It's one amount, not to exceed $2 million, and then I don't know how it's decided, how it gets divided
Right,
up.
and I would assume that it would probably be typical as all of our borrowing is. It would follow the same pattern as for example, we just followed with the leach field and oil tank. So whatever that percentage is for each community would be the same.
Is that like a given, or is that to be negotiated?
No, I believe that's the given. I think that's just standard practice.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that language is
It's
important.
an assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's a given, that's fine, but I think it's important just for the details, for the towns to know that.
Mary?
So to look back on how we came up with 1.5 to 2 million, it was really by looking at what other districts had
Right.
paid.
And
then
talking to other
calls.
districts.
Yes, and so I
Yeah, we
said
made
to-
some phone calls
and
and to try to come up with a number, but we really and truly need a range for that, only because every year things cost more money. And we don't want to put ourselves in that position where we only put in 1.7 and it comes in at 1.8. So now we have.
It's just difficult for us to be able to make a determination, not knowing what the factors are under 1.5 versus 2 million. We're really looking at numbers and thinking, I am thinking like, what's a better sell? 2 million sounds like a lot more than 1.5 million. I mean, without knowing specifically that this is what this would do, 1.5, and 2 million would give us this. And that's usually what we do when we're coming up with numbers.
But if it's a do not exceed amount, because we don't know. I mean,
I was gonna say, we don't
to
know.
Leah's point, if it's 1.5, if we do not exceed, but it comes out at 1.6, we're off to the races again. So it's, any other, yes?
So are you saying that the chances are a lot less likely that it would come in at 2.1?
I
don't
would
think-
say
yeah.
so, based
on what we've seen.
Yeah.
I don't see that at all.
Okay.
based on, enrollments for other high schools and costs that have come in for other school districts, so, I mean.
I think the 2 million just keeps it safe. I think that's really how we look at it.
Yeah, Joe?
I'm sorry, just a quick
Go ahead.
point of clarification. So we were talking about the idea that if we didn't go for the 2 million, we went for 1.5 million, we'd have to go back for further approval if more money was needed. I just want to clarify, my colleague from Stow said special election. It wouldn't be a special election, it would be a special town meeting.
Right, sorry, yes.
I want to make sure that's clear. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Can we entertain a motion?
Sure. I would move to put forth to the member towns a borrowing or authorization of an amount not to exceed $2 million for the purpose of paying for a feasibility study for the Nashoba Regional High School.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion, question?
So would there be a number between 1.5 and 2 million?
It could be.
Well, could we entertain?
You could, but you're still going to run it up against the same risk if it's 1.8 million or 1.9 million. It might be 1.2. We don't know. Like, we have to go through a whole process here. So I can see how you're thinking about. I really can't see how you're thinking about it. It doesn't really quite work that way. So we have to go out to bid. We have to work with MSBA through this, who will hold our hand at every step of the way.
It's really out of our control when we get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they haven't given you any kind of advisement because they can't really
They
do that
can't.
yet because we're not.
That's what the market bears.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have to go out to bid for this, so we're,
Mike, I'm sorry, Pat.
we're at the mercy of, procuring this according to the law.
Mike and then Elaine?
Just to sort of circle back, and it feels like a lot of my colleagues agree, but I think from an optical standpoint, if we were to undersell, I mean, I don't think that would be a good look for us at all. I think it would suggest that we did not have foresight, and I think we would walk away with egg on our face if we were to have to go back for this special town meeting. I really don't think, as much as I dislike spending money, especially other people's money, if we're going to do this, I think we have to do it in a way where we're safe rather than risking.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's easy for someone from Stow to say, let's go for the 2 million, because we're looking at the lowest budget number of the year as well, so there's probably a bit more goodwill in our towns right now, and flexibility there, but I don't know if 2 million needs to be the cliff. Like, is 1.9 a better number? There's not really that big a difference in there. I mean, is that the type of compromise we're looking for, or if that's not going to cut it, then okay, yeah, let's just stick with 2 million.
Other Leah?
Two things. I think that our voters are savvy enough to know there's little difference in, like, after reimbursement especially, between 1.9 and 2 million, so, and I don't want to patronize anybody. The second thing I would ask is, once we go to bid, or if we go to bid, do we get 3 bids? Okay, so are we the deciders on which bid we go with, which architect slash?
There are rules. I was going to say, there's very specific rules around that, so I don't think it's going to be something that comes to this table to go through and take a look. And this is where it goes back to the procurement process, and it's very specific.
Okay. But we will be looking to get the most bang for our buck.
Well, that's what we always do, though. That's part. I mean, for example, like Pat has very specific training on just doing this kind of thing. She just finished her refresher the other day. Yeah, so there are very specific rules, and that's what we would follow.
And I feel like we have some evidence of that in what just happened with the leaching field and the oil tank coming pretty decently under that do not exceed number.
That's a perfect example, because your do not exceed number was 600, and we came in right at that 500, just a little like a dollar under type thing. So yes, I would, and thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate that, and I think it is a good work of your office that does that. And we would say very smooth projects, even though we had a little glitch or two that was out of our control, like finding the trash that was underneath the ground and such. But I mean, but nonetheless, it was a very smooth project. So I think that we've done well with that.
Other questions, Mary?
Just, Brooke, have you talked to town managers? You've spoken to them about this, right? And so they're on board with it too?
Oh, they absolutely know that this is happening. Again, remember, you'll recall that at the last meeting, I had mentioned, and Don Lowe was in the room when we said this, right? That it was really around that round table with the 4 of us that we said it makes sense that we go out now for this. And they absolutely understand. And actually, listening, Steve, to you tonight explaining and articulating so eloquently the process, Don Lowe actually had explained that exact same process around the table with the 4 of us. So I mean, they have a very clear understanding of how this is to work.
But they meant the number. So
well, they know what the numbers are, because we've been talking about the numbers all the way along.
Okay.
So I don't think anyone should be surprised by the number.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay.
Just as a follow-up, have we tapped into our TAs to see what they would recommend bringing to the towns? I mean, I know that is sort of certainly under our purview, but
right. I was going to say, because it would be under our purview, so I probably would.
Did they provide you any sense of?
No, but I mean, we've talked about that 1.5 million. We've all for years we've known that it was going to be in this ballpark, and exactly as you said, Pat, the cost is going to incrementally continue to go up every year. So I don't think they're going to be surprised by this at all, quite frankly. I don't want to speak for them, though, by the way.
I did one quick point. Just to let you know, and let I did broach the subject with our
select board chair, and I told them that this was the number that may be coming forward. So as far as, the TAs and obviously our select board chair. And again, I'm going to implore you specifically, and maybe in general, that, we're going to be before the FinCom on the 2nd, and I would really like to, since we're going to be moving on this tonight, introduce this to the FinCom on the 2nd.
So I certainly had every intention of doing that, because normally when we speak to our FinComs or the planning boards or wherever we're going, we bring up some of the key, whatever the key projects are that we're involved in, so that there's no surprises for them.
I just want to share one comment from last year's events and what have you. One of the things that, and again, I hear that voters are savvy in certain towns, and one of the things that came up last year was that I was very surprised to hear that there wasn't a real understanding of how the division of obligation was spread across the district.
But see, I would say, and please excuse me, I have to take responsibility of that, because I didn't think about it. It was presented as 6, and so you're right, but it should have been 6,000 total, not to exceed, and then Lancaster's share would be blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So I get it.
Can I say this in response?
No, go ahead.
As one representative from Lancaster to another, I would implore you to kindly stop falling on your sword. You didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing wrong. From my perspective, there was a lack of understanding on the voters regarding how the monies were.
I'm going to take the last word on this, Joe. Okay. As a teacher, it is my responsibility to build understanding, and then if I am unsuccessful, then to analyze what went wrong. Last word. We're done.
I saw what you did. You did a masterful job.
I did on kindergarten, not on the leach field. Okay. So are we ready to vote? Do you want to read the motion again?
I will reread the motion to move to put forth to the member towns a borrowing authorization of an amount not to exceed $2 million for the purpose of paying for a feasibility study for the Nashoba Regional High School.
And Leah, you did the second?
I did.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, we're moving on to the grant information, the moment that our audience, our vast television audience has been waiting for.
This is why I like my role, because now I can talk a little bit about us getting somewhere.
Yay!
So yeah, I spoke earlier about a grant that we received that really goes hand in hand with the work that we're doing around the visioning around the new high school, or new project, or just visioning for Nashoba Regional High School. And I really have to do and acknowledge my teaching and learning team. I have to acknowledge the work of Dr. Jake Foster, because he's the one who kind of brought this kind of grant to us and said Nashoba is at a perfect situation to apply for this grant and to receive this grant based on the work that we're doing and the place that we're in the district. So the article that I've handed out to you, it did go public a week ago. Nashoba Regional High School is one of 6 Massachusetts teams to head to California with the Next Generation Learning Center, which is located in Burlington, Vermont. They are a group that works specifically with schools on innovative practices and educational visioning. They are working in concert with the Barr Foundation. The Barr Foundation is a nonprofit organization that was founded in the late 1970s, and they work in Massachusetts, and they're located in Boston. And their work really is to work mostly with high schools at building excellent educators, excellent programming, and visionary programming. So the Barr Foundation is really funding this project for us. So we're one of 6 teams to be selected based on an application of need in terms of where we're at moving forward. The other school districts that were selected were Lowell, Milford, Mohawk Trail, Mount Wachusett Community College Foundation, and Springfield Public Schools. And we're going to be traveling with a team of 10 people from our community, including school committee member, somebody from town management, several high school teachers, myself, Dr. Foster, and parts of my teaching and learning team to be heading to San Diego to visit Mission Vista High School. They have been characterized as a top learning innovation school and center, as well as district. And so we're working on doing some pre-work at going through our high school, doing what is called an observation protocol and a note catcher protocol. We had our first webinar yesterday with Next Generation Learning Center. and to walk us through the process. So we're in the process now of soliciting a lot of information at our current high school through a variety of walkthroughs, a variety of observations, and we're putting together a ton of information for them to give to them 2.5 weeks before we leave. They're then going to take our information and match us up with a consultant who's going to begin working with us, and then working with us when we get out there and match us with the appropriate people out in San Diego to spend 4 days out there and helping them. They're going to help us compile a new vision and new visioning for where we want to go with our high school. So this is a completely funded grant opportunity. They're paying the entire way for us to travel there, for us to stay there, for us to meet with consultants. And I do have to do shout out to my teaching and learning team for the application, the grant application. Grant applications, as we know, often go above and beyond the workday. My team was working on this at night, getting feedback. Dr. Foster was giving us feedback. And when we did get the letter that we were accepted, they advanced us immediately to not having to even interview with the process. The application was so strong. And it also speaks to that the need is strong too. So we're thrilled with this opportunity. It's a fantastic opportunity to get out there and really just go and immerse ourselves in a model school that is high tech, that is innovative, and that has teachers, administrators really focused on student learning. So that will take place from March 22nd to the 25th. Leah is going to join me and my team on that trip as a parent, as a school committee member in the district, also as an educator. So we're really excited about the opportunity. So it's really, really exciting for the district and the school moving forward.
We were thrilled. We were just simply thrilled. It was just, oh my gosh, what an opportunity for us. And everybody who we connected with when we were looking at building this team was so gracious and so good to say, yes, count me in, I want to go with you. And so we kind of took a look and wanted to make sure that we could, the teachers were the big focus for us. And again, we wanted to look at one member from a community who was in the municipal government side of things. And so we're thrilled that we've got somebody joining with us with that too. Well, I'm not going, you're going, but it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of fun. You guys.
And we've looked at the agenda. It's also going to be a lot of work.
A lot of work. Well, you fly out Sunday. I think you meet Sunday night, right?
We'll fly out Sunday and meet Sunday night. And even the work, like we had our first webinar yesterday, and the work that we're already compiling and working on, just in this week, and we'll meet again on Friday, and then we'll meet again next week, and we've got to compile a lot of data to get to them, so that they can then be ready for us when we get there, so that they're pairing us up with the appropriate people and putting us in the appropriate places for us, so that we can grow in the areas where we are identifying need.
Would you like?
At this point, do you have any details about what the composition of our team is and the numbers?
I do. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you share that with us?
Yeah. So they approve a team of 10 to go out. And they asked for, in the application, they wanted us to identify specific positions, and they gave us guidance based on teachers, administrators from central office, administrators that are involved in curriculum building, also people from community members, school committee, town managers, and/or a town administrator. So we took a look, broadly at who that might involve, particularly in our high school. And then in our community.
And those roles have all been filled at this point.
Correct. Right. Yeah, and even in the application, we had to identify who that would be in the application.
The turnaround time was very, very quick
right.
for us. And even now, like we're talking to you tonight about this is basically the tail end of February, and they're flying out the third week of March.
Yeah.
I get the turnaround time is so quick.
Right.
But I think all the credit, to you, to your team, to those folks who worked so hard on that, and of course Dr. Foster for even bringing it to our attention, because otherwise we wouldn't have known about it. So it's just a fantastic opportunity. So thanks to everybody, and especially the Bar Foundation.
It sounds wonderful.
This is right up your alley. I know.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's so exciting. So what about like ballpark, monetary, value of this, and
Yep.
and do you have any discretionary funds that come with this?
So they agree, to fund the trip for us. It's roughly $1,500 a person as they figure it out in terms. So we determine the number of people that will go, but that's what it roughly breaks down to per person attending. That it covers the airfare, the hotels, travel to and from, and they are providing meals for the team while we're out there.
But any other funding, for the work that's being done?
Like a stipend or anything?
Do you have any discretionary?
No, I don't, no.
No.
Okay. It's still wonderful.
It is. I'm so proud. I really am.
It's a great
Just huge.
opportunity. So, and we'll have a chance also. I'm sorry to collaborate with those 5 other districts that are going with us. So we're all going at the same time and taking a look at the agenda. They're really working hard to cross-pollinate schools and districts. So there's a lot of learning from each other as well as from the district we're going out to visit.
Other questions? Leah?
Can you guys just elaborate how, not all of these schools are undergoing the MSBA process?
No.
However, it's almost serendipity that we are, right? Like, can you speak to how this might dovetail into what this grant offers?
That was certainly part of the grant application in terms of where we are at, and that we had just been queued up in terms of an eligibility period for new programming at our high school level. Both of the Bar Foundation and Next Generation Learning really focus on the high school student, and their vision is taking a look at college and career ready and what that means. So I think because we were in a specific place with this for our high school, it put us in a very good position. I think Dr. Foster felt the same way, and I don't think he would have pushed us forward with this if he didn't think we really were prime candidates for it. I think if you take a look at some of the other districts, as much as they're not in that process, their applications probably spoke to similar positions or need in their districts. You can probably note that a lot of those districts are bigger districts than ours. So I think because we are queued up in this MSBA process and the need that we have there was a big part of our application.
Other questions? Just want to echo what Brooke said. You give a lot of credit to your team, but the team needs a captain. And I think one of the real strength that I've seen over the years that I've been on, since you guys have been here, is your ability to get the right people on the bus, to get the work done that needs to be done. And so it's a very strong team. I'm so glad that you're able to go. Look at you, check a lot of the boxes: parent, educator, school committee member. And I know how hard it was, and it was in a sense serendipitous. But your connection with Jake Foster, and then his knowing about the bar, and then Todd cracking the whip over his team of teaching and learning people. I mean, everything just came together.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was a great team effort.
All
the way around.
Everybody's been fantastic, and it's,
Super.
again, I say, not one. It was collaborative.
I think the fact too, when we got the phone call and we knew that they were going to take us through the last step of the interview process because it was such a strong application.
Yeah,
it just spoke volumes to us. It's like, wow, like our folks just did such a tremendous job. So, yes.
Last word.
I was also looking through the rubric that they're asking you to use as your observation tool. And so as much as I think it dovetails into the physical structure of our school community, what they're going to be asking us to observe are relationships, pathways. It's really a wholesale
student
curriculum.
agency is a big one. Student agency, and the power that kids have that we'll see out there, and how we can provide that for our kids.
Project-based assessment, and so it's curriculum, it's instruction, it's assessment, it's the social emotional learning piece, and all that we can reap from the observation is really great, and I really thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Okay. Ad hoc MSBA Communication Subcommittee.
Sure. So I can start, and then Leah and Elaine can chime in if there's anything I'm missing. I think that one of the things that we had talked about yesterday was because we feel that there's a time crunch here for us, and I think that's kind of what you were alluding to earlier, Mike, as well. We've only got so many weeks now until the first week of May, and you're back into that. And we've said that a number of times. And so we thought, rather than calling ourselves or calling this as an ad hoc committee, we really see ourselves as part of a broader committee, and so I don't know that we want to necessarily have committee status to this particular group, because they're 2 people, but we're looking at bringing 2 or 3 students on, we're looking at bringing 2 or 3 staff on, we'll be helping out, and so it's really not an ad hoc committee, and we just felt strongly about that. I leave it to you two to say anything further on this, but that we would just serve as representatives on this particular group.
Yeah, so we went into the meeting and our first order of business was to discuss the charge of whatever the subcommittee would be. And it became quickly apparent that there was two phases to it. One was to create the messaging and the content of what we want to deliver, and then what are the distribution channels for how we're going to deliver it. And as we brainstormed and started talking about it, it didn't seem to make sense that the school committee would drive this. It seemed like it was kind of a working group, collaborative effort with the district. But the school committee is a key part of that. And so, it seemed to make more sense that, this would be something that the superintendent would kind of lead, but that we were all a part of and working together on.
And I think it was, from my lens, I speak only for myself, I thought it was a very rich meeting. I thought we came away with a lot of really good ideas and things that we were, I was able to literally start to implement today, to put into place. So I think we're in a really good place with that, and then we'll do our next meeting next week, is what we had said yesterday. So that's kind of where we're at, that's kind of where we've landed.
So we created that committee, so now we have to dissolve it and let it be that, so by the advantages that there is more, it can be more agile, flexible, and not have to conform to open meeting laws?
Yeah, it's also just not us driving the process.
Okay, no, that's an important point.
Structurally, it doesn't really make sense.
Okay.
It's more of a working group.
Yeah.
Right.
Good point. Okay.
Task force.
Task force, I like it. Okay, so.
So I talked to Alita about it,
Okay.
and she said that officially we would just dissolve the committee. We'll have one more quick meeting to approve the minutes that will still go up and everything, and then moving forward, we just report out.
Okay. You want to make a motion to that?
All right, can I make my own motion?
Please.
I move to dissolve the ad hoc MSBA communications subcommittee.
Second.
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, it is dissolved. All righty.
But you're not going anywhere, I need you both.
Stay there. Yeah. Oh, no, this doesn't absolve you of any responsibility. Okay, so now we have the employee insurance update.
Yeah, Pat said that you'll recall that she was here once before and said, she would come back, and I don't even know that she's got much of anything to report out tonight, other than to say, here's where we're at, and this is kind of...
Yeah. Basically, our health insurance rates went up 4.9% this year, which is okay, I think. I mean, considering this year we didn't make any changes to the plan. And that would be for our health insurance. For the dental insurance, we had no increase from last year because we had a 2-year contract at the rate that we had. So that's it. And that's all reflected in the budget.
Okay.
So
we don't have to do any actions, just a report. Okay. So now we have the budget update.
Mm-hmm.
And are those new executive new summaries?
Yes, they are.
Does anyone besides me need one?
I think everybody needs one.
Everyone needs
I think
one.
Mike took one, but I think...
Okay. Can we get those passed around?
So I think, I don't know, we'll certainly spend as long or as short a time as you want with this evening. And if you send us away with questions, that's fine. You'll need to vote on your budget at the next school committee meeting, so I just want to make sure that you're reminded of that. Again, if you can just go to the budget hearing deck there. I can certainly go through any of the things that you were talking about in a little bit greater detail if you'd like. And I think, Pat, if you just want to go through and just highlight a couple of key things. Let me start with, the last page, of course, is the grand number at the very, very back. That's, basically the number that you're seeing up there. Pat, just go through really super quickly here, and then I'll go through and we'll see if there's anything further that you need tonight.
As I had discussed, we had up on the slide, I said one of the
The next
biggest,
slide, yeah.
some of the drivers that we had was the Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment. You can see that that went up almost over $100,000. That's in the first section in insurance and benefits. Out of district tuition, that's another line that that's about page 3. You see that there's a significant increase there, and that is due to some move-ins, kind of a hybrid of kids going out and whatever. And in addition to that, let's see, the Unit A and C contract matrix, you'll see like that there are changes in each of the schools. Some of them, it looks like that there's a big increase, like especially in the middle schools, because what you're seeing there is the engineering.
The Minuteman position in there, in the middle schools. That position, formerly known as Minuteman.
Right, that has moved in there, and also some other additions based on enrollment. Let's see, can you go to the next? Okay, so now do you want to talk more about this?
So I think, one of the things we put out there tonight, and this is just, I don't know what your thinking is on this or not, but the OPEB funding and the turf field, we've still got 50,000 sitting in both of those lines, and I'm not sure if you want us to keep that 50,000 in both of those lines, because it of course comes together to be 100,000 if you want that or not.
Can we see that in the?
Yeah. What pages are they on? The OPEB and the
Right, they're on the first page.
first page, right? About halfway down.
I see OPEB. Yep.
So you see the $50,000 there.
And I'd like to speak about that too. Was it last year that we voted to use revolving fund money?
Yes.
To fund OPEB?
Yeah.
Part of the process for funding the stabilization or to fund OPEB is that has to be part of our budget process.
Yeah.
So that has to be part of the document that is presented to the towns.
Okay.
So where that money is coming from revolving funds and going into stabilization, we will still be making a $100,000 contribution to the OPEB fund this year.
Share in this budget.
Even though we
For
reduced
FY20.
for 21.
For 21.
Even though it was voted on before.
Right, because we had to wait to do that transfer until it was part of a budget process.
Okay.
So that $100,000 goes in 21.
Okay.
So in essence, your books show that there is going to be $100,000 going into OPEB this year without this. But this is an earlier vote that you took. As she said, and you spot on, it's part of the process that we have to take.
Yes, Mike?
So just, I'm a little confused here. Does that mean that
It is confusing.
the overall contribution is going to be 150?
Based on what we have right now.
If we leave that 50,000 in there, the 50,000 that we've put in the actual budget.
Right.
The 100,000 you decided on previously,
Right.
but it will go into it in that fiscal year.
Leah?
If, this is just a point of clarification, I guess. If we were to approve a budget that put 50 grand in OPEB and 50 grand in this track and field stabilization fund, and then we had some unforeseen situation that pulled funding, could we move this money to, say, cover a kindergarten teacher if we needed to?
Once it's in stabilization, I don't think you can.
What about, and the OPEB is also a stabilization fund?
Yes, yeah. Well, it's not a
stabilization.
It's not a stabilization, but it's a very specific fund. Yeah.
But the money will be there for good. Like, we wouldn't be able to move it over.
Well, yes.
If an emergency.
You can't spend money on a teacher for that.
Once it's designated for those two things and those specific funds, that's where it stays until it is removed to use for those purposes.
What would be the impact? Because I know that we're at a place where we never imagined we'd be. I recall at the beginning of the year, we were anticipating that the towns would accept an increase of 4%. So this is very, very different. And we're making, when I see 9 staff positions, it's concerning, of course.
Oh, sure.
What if we were to save approximately $100,000 from the budget? That's a position. It might be a position and a half. If we do not put money into the stabilization fund for the track or the additional $50,000 for OPEB, is there a detrimental impact that has to us for FY21?
I would say no, because we still have $100,000. We're making a contribution in fiscal year 21 to the OPEB fund. And I think it's really important for our bond rating that we continue to make a contribution.
Sure.
As it is in fiscal year 21, we're going to be making $150,000 based on this budget right now as it sits.
Yes.
If we were to take the $50,000 and use it towards salaries, then we would still be making a $100,000 contribution.
Okay. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
No, and with regard to stabilization for the track, it's just this year we're not contributing to that.
And when it comes time to replace that wear layer, which we put off to next year, it's going to be increased.
Okay. Elaine?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, and we have about 100,000 right now sitting in the track.
Okay.
50 and, yes, 100,000.
I think there's 100,000 in there right now.
Okay. Elaine?
I know that how the OPEB trust affects your bond rating is a little squishy, but do you have any details on like
You mean
what
how?
makes, like what makes a difference if it, if your rating goes up by
Nothing
this much?
concrete.
Okay.
I suppose if you weren't making any contribution at all, that it would have a detrimental effect, because it is a liability. And that if you weren't making any contribution at all, it's like you're ignoring it.
Right, I'm just thinking our bond rating is going to be really important coming up.
Oh, absolutely. Don't think that we haven't had that same discussion. Yeah,
absolutely. And there are a number of things that affect that. It's our E&D.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
So you have to be we're really walking a tight line here.
Steve?
Okay. Having been a booster of OPEB contributions for the last 3 years, I think that the $100,000 that's already been allocated for OPEB contribution for this year, first of all, let's face it, it's a drop in the bucket for what our overall liability is, somewhere in the $45 million.
42, don't exaggerate.
Well, give or take.
Okay.
Okay? $42 million
Yeah.
liability. But if we can give Brooke that counselor that she is looking for very, very closely.
We can't tell her what to do with the money. We can make the money available.
Yeah, he knows how much I'd like that counselor for the middle
Well,
school.
We know.
she said earlier this year.
Yes.
I think we seriously have to look at limiting our contribution to OPEB this year to $100,000.
Okay, thank
And
you.
you know the way I normally go on this one.
I sure do. Mike, did you have a comment?
Just to kind of go back to this 100 versus 150, does that mean that in our budget, if we vote on a budget that does not include a $50,000 contribution, the item line would read 0?
Yes.
Leah?
I just worry that doing an OPEB line item of 0 then puts us in a position next year where we're going to have to come up with $50,000 or $100,000.
So, if I may, I recognize me. So what I was thinking about, because FY20, we have been putting $100,000 into a stabilization account for full-day K. FY '22, we won't have to do that. So there's $100,000 there that we could do something with. Just a thought.
And incidentally, last year, that's exactly what we talked about, is once this process ended, we would then shift that money back into OPEB, because the concern last year was that we're not contributing enough to OPEB.
Right, right. We could make up that, we could put the, well, I hate to plan ahead, but
You will never make enough money.
No, not about OPEB, I've given up on that. But just to say that if we are pulling 50 from stabilization for track and 50 from OPEB, then the potential is there to make it up next year with the 100,000 that we were putting into full-day K stabilization, just a thought. So we don't have it now, but we might have it then. Elaine?
So that all makes sense. I'm also a little concerned about E&D and how much of an increase we are putting back into the budget. And if that should be a priority as well, because like you said earlier, what happens when something comes up? Like, is our E&D actual reserves low enough that it could really screw us up?
Well, I think it's probably gonna be dependent on how we do this year and how much money we use in 2022 from E&D.
Yeah, but we were having a hard time even reducing that hamster wheel by like $50,000 a year.
We have $1 million going in this year.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Leah?
So therefore, if we were to take out the 50,000 for the track, we would have $100,000 there, and we need to pay for the relayering.
Next year.
How much does that cost?
Which one was here?
I don't remember either.
Is it more than
I don't
100?
remember off the top of my head. I can get that number, but it's over 100,000.
So how are we going to pay for that? If we
It
only have
will be
100?
fully in the budget.
For the following year?
Yeah, 22.
Oh,
next year.
So if it's 140.
We'll offset by what's in the stabilization.
Right, so we have 100,000 in the stabilization fund. We will go into the year that we have to pay for it with 100,000 plus maybe 50 if we can recoup that. But will it cost more than 150? Will it cost 180? And if it does, where's that 30 coming?
I don't think we know that right now. I think that's looking too far ahead.
Right,
And I think the prices of we're not exactly sure what it's going to be.
I don't want to put a number out there that could be wrong.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's sage, yeah.
Yeah. But that's what the reality of it is. If we'll have $50,000 less to put towards that next year.
Yeah, I mean, that feels very close. And I think not to prioritize athletics over retirement benefits, but I just don't want to be caught short on the track that we are going to have to write a check for in the next 380 days.
We've had this discussion as well. I just want to just step back for a minute here too. I think one of the things I enjoy about this, as strange as this is going to sound about this discussion, is that you can see how far ahead we are thinking and we are planning, whether it's OPEB, whether it's track. And again, kudos to previous school committee members for looking ahead and helping and supporting us as that we can even have this level of discussion. We're talking 22 and we're sitting in 20. It's a very good feeling. I just want to put that out there.
Other questions? Do we want to entertain a motion? Oh, yes, Leah.
If we took it out of the track field in this budget and it goes into, say, your salary line item, could it then go back into the track and field stabilization budget, right? So like the opposite of my earlier question. If we end up not needing that personnel money?
Well, then it really rolls in at the end of the year to the E&D.
To the E&D.
But then it's still workable money for us. So I mean, your thinking is right. It's just about the process of how it gets there. But your thinking is spot on.
So that I'm feeling more comfortable with freeing the money up, not to necessarily spend it but to make it freer.
And I want to say too, we're not coming forward and asking you to do any of this tonight. So I mean, if you would like to, that's fine, but we're certainly not coming to you with hat in hand saying, please, we just don't want to put towards OPEB this year or anything like that. But it's just food for thought for you.
Well, I know it's food for thought, but, we have to vote next week.
Yeah.
So if there is an inclination to do this, then we ought to consider it this evening, unless people have a different point of view. Steve?
I would like us to pass rather than a vote of a motion, a resolution that we recommend the $50,000 for OPEB and the $50,000 for the field for next year be removed from the budget.
From the budget, that part of the budget.
And reallocated.
Okay.
In other words, it's our sense that we would like this to do. We're not forcing Brooke to do this.
So you probably...
It's a resolution.
All right, so do we vote on a resolution, or?
Yes.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
So do you need a motion?
I just did. I would like to move that a sense of the school committee resolution be accepted to remove the $50,000 for the field stabilization fund and $50,000 from OPEB, and recommend that it be reallocated. Reallocated based upon the superintendent's recommendations.
Very good. Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? Questions? Mike?
Just personally, this is a bit of a struggle. I realize that this came up this week because of how we've reworked the budget to present for the workshop this week. And we have to vote on it next week. So that puts us in a really difficult position. We have to make this decision tonight.
It would be helpful.
I think personally, I've always been an advocate of putting money into OPEB. It's sort of this hard balance. I actually prefer to know, not to know, but to understand where that money is best used, although we can't say where it goes, rather than it just being fluid and floating. So this is not a question. I guess it's sort of a statement and a comment, and I don't know, it's tough. It's a tough one.
They're all tough decisions. Yeah. Yes, Elaine?
Would it be possible to separate the motions so that we talk about OPEB separately?
Well, it's not. It's a resolution.
I'm sorry. Separate. Can we split the resolution?
Sure, why not?
So we have
different feeling.
All right.
Amend?
Let me withdraw the first one.
Okay.
If you withdraw your second,
I will withdraw.
We'll start again.
Thank you.
I would like to have a resolution of the board to remove $50,000 from the budget allocated to the field stabilization fund and allow the superintendent to reallocate that $50,000 where she feels best.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Leah?
Okay, so now I'm thinking, so if we were to reallocate this money perhaps toward a position.
We don't do that.
Okay. But I'm just saying that.
That's why I said for her.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just thinking long term, that money isn't going to be here every single year.
It kind of is, but it just gets...
But if we have to spend it on the track.
No, it's a new allocation next year. So we will allocate that, we might decide to allocate $100,000 for the track next year. What I'm looking at is the money that we will not need next year for full day K stabilization.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The reason I was thinking about these two things separately is because we know the track is going to come due next year, and so we don't have a number around it, and that makes me really nervous about taking money that we know we're going to spend in short order, potentially away, and then getting us into a difficult position next year. Whereas OPEB is like, all right, if we pull back, I know we don't want to, but if we pull back, we know we can catch up, or that's not, we're not gonna pay out OPEB next year.
Right.
So there's more wiggle room there, or more fluidity there, and so I'm kind of thinking about them differently.
Other comments?
So this motion, this resolution is about the track,
To
clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
To take the $50,000 from the track stabilization fund and have it reallocated within the
Well,
budget.
it's not to take it from the existing fund,
No, from the line item for the FY21 budget.
and we will have that 100,000 next year.
That's my.
That will be our slush
We
amount.
don't use the word slush on this.
That will be our available funds
Bingo.
for completely paying for the track refurbishment.
Can we, are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of reallocating the $50,000 that has been allocated for the track stabilization line item in the FY21 budget and asking the superintendent to reallocate that. All those in favor? All opposed?
Is that Kathy, Mary, Steve?
We have a tie. So in the face of, this is where it doesn't pass.
It's a tie vote, so.
It doesn't pass.
Yeah, for
Okay.
all intents and purposes, it doesn't.
So would you make the other resolution, please?
No.
Would someone like to make a resolution relative to the OPEB line item?
Can I just clarify, was that Steve, Mary, and who else?
I was in favor.
Okay. And you abstained?
I abstained.
Okay, Elaine?
Be it resolved that we eliminate the line item dedicated to the OPEB stabilization fund.
Yep.
And allow the superintendent to reallocate as she sees fit.
The amount?
Of $50,000.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you.
No, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't pass, no.
Thank you.
So, other questions for Brooke about the budget? That's Steve, the other Steve, Mike.
That's what he was Scott last time.
He still is Scott, in our hearts.
I'll have you know, everybody that watched the school committee meeting called me Scott all week. I had voice messages that said, "Hey, Scott."
You know what that means? People watch. I think that's great.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
We digress.
So,
It's getting late.
just clarification, I know I do this a lot, and I'm sure this is a quick answer, but system-wide line item, six lines down, can you specify what those rather large unspecified district-wide cuts
Oh,
are made of?
what page are you on?
Front page. Yep, it's
That's,
749,000.
That's the,
those are the 9 positions, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Those are
Yes.
the 9 positions.
Got it.
Okay. Yes, Leah?
Just a quick clarifier, I don't know how it gets called out or if I can even know past this, but when you presented the budget, one of the things you were seeking to do from kind of an innovative curriculum standpoint was to introduce those like part-time position
The
curriculum.
leads.
Yeah.
The leads.
Leads. So are those still there?
The leads are in there for the ELA and the math lead.
Everything else is gone.
Everything else is gone.
And ELA.
ELA, English
Okay,
Language
sorry.
Arts,
Yes.
mathematics.
Yeah, I thought it was ELA, but
K-12,
no.
K-12.
Okay. Yep.
We're going to come back next year and try again.
Any other questions about the budget? Okay.
I just want to say too that you know, although we had from Brooke the outline of what would happen. I mean, this is, so we have this tonight, and that's not a lot of time, you know, for us to really look at this in some depth and compare it. And also to know exactly, I think it's important to know what cuts so that we don't, I would just expect more description than this in terms of whatever you can do. I understand how staff positions and that part.
Right, and that's
which
the
you
biggest
don't-
chunk. Yeah.
Yes. which you
Because
don't wanna
if you
do.
take a look, Mary, if you were to take a look, for example, at teaching and learning, for example, you would go through like line by line by line. I mean, it would be mammoth, especially this year with the amount of reductions that we've made. I don't know what your paper would look like, quite frankly. So, because each department, and I said that earlier, each department, each school sent in all of their cuts on the various line items. And so, that it's extensive.
So, but I mean, to have the questions, to ask the questions, what's there, what's not there. And I'm used to, it was a long time ago that I was on school committee, but getting information like this prior to a meeting, so we really have time to work with it and to digest it and to think about questions. So,
well, certainly we can add another meeting if you'd like to, or we can certainly do that. And if the other thing that you can do is pull in a budget and warrant committee meeting, and we can go into greater depth with you with that. And those are the meetings generally that you would come to us and say, okay, here are the questions, and school committee members can funnel questions to you folks or whatever to bring back. So I would certainly encourage that you do that to you. So you've got the whole point is you've got time between now and the next 2 weeks to do that, to funnel the questions to us. We want you to do that.
Yeah, and I would say that, certainly another meeting is an option, budget and warrant, it would be a place to vet some of these things. We have the original budget books, we
Right.
have this, and we're not just gonna do a cold vote on the budget, there'll be a final discussion, and then we'll vote.
yeah.
So there is
I'm
time.
used to a lot, because this is one of our provinces, the budget is ours.
But I think the other thing to understand is that finding these cuts, Brooke and Pat have alluded to the amount of time, but right up until the last minute, and you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a ballpark that they will be cutting. Can they specify it right now? No, because if you say, we're going to cut these 9 positions, and then someone retires or someone leaves, there are a lot of moving parts. So the hope is that some of this can be done through attrition, but in the past, when we have had to designate a chunk of money to cut to get us to our target, it has been at the superintendent's discretion. And I know it would be helpful to know what exactly the cuts would be, but that's for the superintendent to decide. We were told 3%. It's been hard. This is where we're at. If you want to go through and ask questions, that's fine. But I think that there's still things at this point of the year. If you tell somebody they don't have a job and then all of a sudden that position didn't need to go, so.
I feel very good about, and this is not, I don't feel good about this budget. I remember saying that last year too. You don't, nobody wants to cut positions. Right. Nobody wants to do that. Because I feel that every staff member that we have in this district plays a vital role in our district. But having said all of that, we go back to the communities need a kind of a certain number, and you're right, we started at 4%, and that's kind of where we were initially. But again, in all fairness to our town managers, they're looking too, and their lives change too, and so when it came in, can we have it at 3? I'm proud of the fact that we got it there. Because this was not easy, and this has not been easy for. And I know you already know all this, so I'm just telling you what you already know. But it's not easy for the administrators. It's not easy for people like Rob, who's had to cut different lines. That oh my gosh, now what? Because now we've got to try to figure this all. I know that you know this all too well, but. Each of these units, as they try to make their units work and flourish and do the best that we can for the district, And, you know, you're asked, well, can you cut another 10,000 here? Can you cut another 5? It's not been easy. So for us to bring in I just can't even begin to imagine what that would look like right now. Just because we've cut in the smallest of corners.
Just even with like our technology budget, God bless our technology director, he creates 4 different budget versions for us that are like, and I mean, he's under me, so I sit with him and he creates 4 and we go through each one, and the specificity just in the district technology budget alone is pages and pages, and he creates 4 separate ones. And then we decide where we can go and what we can, and just I'm just talking about the enormity just of that department alone is the magnitude is enormous.
And with that, we ended up going with a hybrid.
With a hybrid of one of the versions.
So all that being said, there's still 2 weeks to compare this to what we got originally and come back with questions. So there will be an opportunity. But the way the budget is done now and the way it was done 20 years ago.
I'm also going on, recent experience.
Oh, sure. But I'm thinking about the budget 20 years ago in this district. Very different process. So is 2 weeks enough time?
I would think so. It's very difficult to get something, the night of, and then
but we're not voting tonight.
Right.
We're not voting on the budget tonight.
No, we voted
we have a
on
meeting.
lines.
There is a budget and warrant committee meeting at 5 o'clock in 2 weeks.
Okay. Leah?
I was just wondering if I were to take this document and compare it to the binder that I have, who should I address my questions to? Should it be to our budget and warrant subcommittee? Should it be to Brooke?
I don't know how you would like to do it.
I think that I can't answer them, so I would circumvent me, CC me on it if you'd like.
Okay.
But I would think that Brooke and Pat,
either one of us probably. Pat's probably the best person to get the level of specificity.
So can we agree that if you have questions before the next meeting, to send them to Pat?
Yeah, and I
CC
would
me,
need them
please?
in advance of the budget and
Yes.
warrant meeting.
Yes.
Because there were changes, there were over 300 lines, almost 400 lines in this budget. And I would say that there have been changes made to probably 75% of them to get to this 3%.
I'm just wondering, if you've eliminated an assistant principal job, that's probably something that the public should know.
Right.
Although I don't know, I'm new to this, so.
But we haven't done that, and we would tell you that. That's why we put the key points up here, so that everybody knows these are the key points right now.
Okay.
Other questions? Well, I think it's important that we understand the process for passing the budget and what the implications are if we don't. So I have the regional school district budget process from the DESE, and so if you just bear with me, I'll go through the different steps. We did the public hearing tonight, and public copies of the budget were made available to the public legally by 48 hours in advance. We had a quorum to hold the hearing, so in terms of adopting the budget, we need a 2/3 vote, so that means 5 of us would have to vote to approve the budget. The budget must be adopted 45 days before the town meetings, and our town meetings are all on the same day. Let's see. Annual regional school district budget requires approval of 2/3 local, all right, so that when it goes to, if we pass it and it goes to the towns, 2 of the 3 towns have to pass it in order for it to take effect. Failure to approve a budget. If 2/3 of the towns do not approve our budget, we have 30 days to reconsider, amend, and resubmit a budget. With the approval of the Commissioner of Education, regional districts could have an additional 15 days to do this. The amended budget must be provided to the chair of each town's Board of Selectmen, FinCom, and Treasurer no later than 7 days after the adoption. Prior to the expiration of the 45 days from the date on which the amended budget was adopted by the Regional School Committee, each town shall hold a town meeting to consider approving the amended budget. So it's very important that 2/3 of the towns approve this, because it's not pretty if that doesn't happen. So there's a whole process that you go through in order to get it passed. The other piece for us is if we fail to approve it, we have to work until we do it. We might have to set up another meeting. I think our deadline, although the regs say the 31st of March, our deadline is the 15th.
15th.
Okay. The regs are 10 years old, so maybe I don't know. So we will stay until we have our budget approved and do whatever it takes to do it. Because if we don't approve it, it goes nowhere. Mike?
So just to be clear, we're voting on this on the 11th?
Yes.
And if it is not voted on, then we have 4 more days to vote it in.
We do.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on what you were saying.
We're holding the next meeting at your house if it doesn't pass.
Not big enough, sorry.
So just keep that in mind. But given the scenario that Brooke has presented, I think it's very likely that it'll pass. 3 towns, if not, then 2 out of the 3 towns. But we have to make sure that we have the 5 votes to make it pass, or we stay until we do. Any questions? So, moving right along, we did our subcommittee reports. There is a matter I have to bring to your attention. Please bear with me. So, it seems as though, I know we've done a lot of work in making sure that, especially with regard to the high school, there is a uniform process for approving overnight field trips. And so far this year, we've been pretty lucky, and people have conformed to our expectations. I've been made aware this afternoon of a trip that has been going on for a while, but that has not submitted their paperwork because they were not aware of what they needed to do, not so much what they needed to do, but the timeline. So, long story short, the student council, there is an annual student council conference that they go to in Hyannis. It is scheduled for March 4th through the 6th. And I don't have the official paperwork, but I can tell you what the trip is about, what the cost is, and ask if, for a special consideration, if I can have 5 of us meet to go over the official paperwork and approve this before the 4th. I know 10 students and 2 adults that would be very grateful. So, I was looking at either Friday or Monday to see if we could get 5 of us in one place. And it would be one item agenda. And I think we did this for a German field trip last year. Was that it?
Yeah. Right before Halloween.
Yes, Joe?
Can I make a suggestion?
You can make any suggestion
All
you
right.
like, stupid or otherwise.
2/7 of this committee is going to be at the FinCon meeting in Lancaster on Monday night.
That's not stupid, this is like brilliant.
So 3 of us
Yes.
could show up. I'm gonna be there, you're gonna be there.
Yes,
And if 3 other members could be there, we could hold our meeting,
right before.
we could hold it somewhere in, I'm sure if I spoke to Stan or to
Absolutely.
Al Orlando, you'll probably find a meeting room for us.
That is a
in-
wonderful idea. If folks would be interested in doing that, it would be the second, Monday the 2nd. We could do it at 6:30 somewhere.
Yeah.
Is anybody available?
I will be out.
All right.
I would be available. We do need to have the agenda posted. 2 days in advance.
Okay,
Right?
Yep, tomorrow by 6:30.
thank you.
Fine. So what are we saying?
That's, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I need one more. Elaine's out of town.
What did you say?
All right, I'm bringing my kids.
No, that's fine. Lancaster's a lovely place. You bring them to Providence, bring them to Lancaster, they'll enjoy it. Okay, thank you so much. 6:30, it's gonna be at the Prescott Building in Lancaster. Joe is gonna let us know. I will post the agenda. And I will leave it to you two to put the screws to those student council advisors.
I really feel badly for them. Well, I didn't.
No, she did, I mean, she thought she was doing everything right.
I know,
and then
yeah.
it
This is
happened.
probably one of those trips that's been going on for 25 years at
Yes.
the Hyannis Conference Center.
Yes.
Just gone and gone
That's
and
And
gone
not
and
even
gone
thought
and
that
not.
they needed to bring it
Yes,
here.
thank you,
Probably
Joe.
the
Do
way
you
it
want to
went.
talk to town administrator or the clerk and find through the specs so we can?
Yes, right in the Prescott Building.
All right,
That's
so
good.
I'll
Would you
talk to
take care of
tomorrow.
that?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop there tomorrow. I'll let Alita know.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and then I'll send you the bones of it, and then we can, yeah. And I think that we can ask Mrs. Early, who happens to be a Lancaster resident, if she could join us.
Okay, can you reach out to her?
Okay. Thank you so much.
This
Yes,
is how we
Mary.
support student
I know,
voice.
I hate to, I know, we are. Student leadership. Okay, I think that's all I have. Yes, Leah?
I just don't want to adjourn before the parking lot. I have a parking lot item.
Oh, I forgot to say that about items to be considered for next and future agendas. Go ahead.
Yeah, so,
And then we'll go back and do the consent agenda, but let's do
Okay.
this first.
this may be somewhat, grounded in hysteria,
Okay?
but you're gonna be too prepared. So as we move into a time frame where the coronavirus is making people nervous.
Yes.
Right, so I had some parents reach out and say that they're obviously concerned, but there are a few articles on how schools are making plans even to do kind of distance learning. If some, right, so like we're wondering, or the parents were wondering, is there a contingency plan?
So that's a great question, actually, and we can put it in the parking lot, or I can address parts of it right now.
It's up to you.
I
don't know put it in the parking
No,
lot?
I think, considering the concerns, I think it should be discussed. It should be, at least we should get an idea of what's going on
Okay.
now.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, I defer to my esteemed colleague from Stow.
I would agree with you too, and there's a piece of you that says, is this paranoia or is it really,
Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't really out to get you, so you have to remember that.
So, to be honest with you though, MESC, for example, put something out today, I don't know if
Yeah,
you saw
I
that.
think that.
And MESS put something out today, and it was actually on my list to prepare another memo to go out to our parents with some additional resources. Are we at the stage now where we're looking at possible alternative in terms of just instruction and that kind of thing? No, we're not. We're nowhere near there at all. And I was thinking, we'd already sent a memo out to our parents. We already talked about the fact that, the tablets that we're using in the foggers, for example, are already registered with, as being effective agents against the coronavirus. So we actually are a little bit a step ahead as I watched all the MESs, like all the superintendents, chime in today, going through the listserv, and I thought, wow, we're kind of ahead of them because we've already done this. However, I think that there are new things that we can put out there to our parent community right now. We are watching. I mean, we talk about this every day, quite frankly. So it's certainly on our radar. Okay. So I think that we're prepared to send out another memo, within the next couple of days or early
Things
next week.
of that nature that go out, it would be helpful if the school committee was CC'd on them, because I know
Yes, I think that we've talked about this.
there's a Power School engine that sends it out to families, but it would be helpful if the school committee were
Right, and
aware.
we're aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've been at it. You
Okay.
ran it after the last meeting, you and Mary and Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I don't think it's paranoia at all, to be honest with you. And the truth is, I mean, we're watching very carefully, and people have been very good to say, I've been traveling, or I've been here, or I've been there. You know, we've asked students to stay home, or staff to stay home, or so we are taking very proactive measures within the district right now. We're monitoring it very closely. So great question.
Okay, I have an item to be considered for a future or next, not the next one, but future. We're going to full day K next year. I would like the school committee to be briefed on how kindergarten programming will change and what that's gonna look like. So you're going from a half day to a full day program? And again, you know, June, whenever. Okay, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, Elaine.
I have an item for a future agenda as well, definitely not the next meeting. But given the student presentation we had today and the some of the things the high school students brought up in the student voice PLT, I think it would be great to get a readout of green initiatives or maybe a policy review or something to that effect to see like what are we doing and where can we do better.
Well, you know, I think that that's a great point because we've got pockets of it happening everywhere. And I was thinking tonight as I was watching, weren't they fabulous? Oh my gosh. Anyway, I was thinking tonight, you know, we really need to pull this into like a single matrix, or so that we can say, you know what, as a district, this is what we do, because we do so much of it across the district, but we haven't articulated it. We haven't put it all together in one place. So I think that that's something that we should follow up on.
It can also inform and be a part of that visioning looking forward at the high school.
Yeah.
Because as you look forward and you see a lot of what SBA and buildings are doing, there's a lot of green initiatives in those processes.
Yeah,
So.
I think you'll find that if you put that information out there, you're going to get a lot of allies back and a lot of offers for help or networking connections or ways to sort of involve the community into making improvements that don't necessarily have to come like straight from the school budget.
I just thought it was such an interesting a takeaway for me as I was listening about the cups, because honestly I was so focused on the water, not once did I ever think about the cups.
And children and
Isn't
cups.
that interesting?
Yeah.
And children and cups, yes, I thought that was fabulous.
Leah.
Just piggybacking on what we were talking about with regard to DECA, I have wondered often if it is feasible or, you know, why don't we have a 501c3 kind of a foundation established? I know that larger districts all have them. I don't
Bolton has
know
one,
much
right?
of what I'm talking about, but I
Educational
know that
foundation?
these foundations have, what, do we? It's usually PTOs. Right, so like, so I'm only talking about Leominster, and Anne Marie can certainly back me up here, but, so I know that Leominster has a very well-endowed foundation, and that endowment then is what funds all kinds of things.
So if we
And
want
I had-
information about it, could we put it on a
Yeah.
future agenda for Pat to bring forward information that
Because
we
I had
would
a
need to
parent come to me and
understand?
say, like, I would love to donate money to the schools, I just don't know how.
So that's a great, I think that's a great topic for us to consider. And actually in Ashland, we had a foundation as well when I was there, and they had a major fundraiser every year that the whole community came out to. It was fabulous, and they raised a lot of money. And you're exactly right; these kinds of things got taken care of. Yeah.
Joe.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Was Leah done? Or? This may not necessarily be an item for a future agenda. It may already be scheduled for future agenda. But I just wanted to say that after last week, the 12th meeting, and the decision of the district committee to reconfigure the number on the school committee, coupled with the correspondence or email that we received from Christine Lynch, it has raised in my mind a significantly more number of questions than the letter that we received actually answered. At the hearing on the 12th, it was represented
Excuse me, Joe, is this a discussion that you want to have now?
No. What I'm asking is, I'm trying to get a clarification, because I'm just trying to say that on the 12th, it was represented during the meeting that there would be a discussion on the addendum next week.
We obviously didn't put it on the.
Oh, no, all right, so when you said next week, you were actually referring to this meeting here.
I don't know what I was referring
Okay.
to. I was totally bonkers. Watch the film.
I know that, I did, that's why I was, okay. So,
I guess the question is, because there's a lot of questions that, and also in response to your email as well, has raised even more questions with me. So, was it the intent of the chair to have this issue regarding the addendum on the agenda for this evening?
It was the intent of the chair to get through last week's meeting and plan for this one.
All right.
And so it was probably an omission on my part, but we do need to have the discussion,
Right.
and Mary is prepared to lead it and talk about the addendum, correct?
Okay, so it was never, no, I was asking if it was gonna be on the agenda, that's what I wasn't trying to engage in a discussion yet, so.
It will be on an
Okay.
agenda.
All right, and on that note.
Yes.
Just make one clarifying point from the meeting, because again, you made it very clear that it was a long day for you, and there was a lot of information being bandied about. And I know we did discuss this via email, but there was a couple of times that it said, that was stated during that meeting, that this issue was going to be placed on the town warrant. It was mentioned twice, as a matter of fact.
Just a point of clarification, when we get to the point of doing an amendment, that will be on a warrant, not an addendum doesn't go on a warrant.
No, what?
No,
I think we're talking about, you were talking about the additional positions we're gonna be on.
the additional positions are placed on a ballot, not a warrant, and that's done by the select board men.
Right.
People.
What I'm saying to you is
Yes.
that for purposes of people who may be watching this or watched it last week, it was twice stated that once the vote was taken, that we would now be alerting our town select board chairs that this is to be placed on the town warrant. I think you really want to say should be placed on the town ballot.
Right, but that's when, I CC'd folks on the email, that I sent to the town administrators and the chair of the select board, just to say that we had made this vote and we were informing them. It's not for the school committee to direct a town board to do anything. They know that they have to put it on a ballot. So it was not in the communication that I sent to them, and I think I CC'd folks on that. So I hear what you're saying, that there was a confusion, and in the email I sent you, I admitted that that was a mistake. The word warrant, it should have been.
No, I'm not looking at.
No, I know
make
you're
sure
not.
that people understand
But
that this is, because I had this conversation with the clerk in Lancaster, and there was some confusion about this and what have you. So just for clarification purposes, it's going on the town ballot, not the town warrant.
But the select board has to vote to put it there.
Correct, right.
That's correct. Okay. Are we good? Leah.
When do you think the addendum
Wait,
will happen?
I just want to point something. I'm trying to get us out of here before 4 hours. Go ahead. We're good.
Do we have any sense as to when the addendum will happen? Or not the addendum, but the alteration of our agreement?
There's no rush.
There's no rush.
It takes a long time.
The DESE is reviewing our agreement and our amendment, and we're waiting to get that feedback before we go through the process of amending anything. But right now, we've been advised that an addendum will suffice.
Yes. Are you asking about the addendum? Because that's all set.
I'm asking about like, the alteration of the whole agreement.
Oh, we have to wait.
Yeah.
If we wait until they send the review, then we'll all have it, and then the amendment process will begin. I'm so excited for that.
Okay.
I can see that.
I know you don't want to have a discussion on this, okay, but I will just be very brief, okay? So, right now, if you look at the school district's website, there's a copy of the district agreement on our website. The district agreement on the website indicates that it's the 2003 district agreement.
It's an amendment to the,
Okay. So, I don't want to get a discussion, but you're saying, first of all, from what I understand.
It's on the agenda, we can't. This is an agenda item.
Here's my question then. Is the 2003 district agreement valid? That's what I want to.
Joe, all right, with all due respect.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda. We'll put it on the agenda.
Okay, all right.
We'll hash it out because it's a whole nother topic. And we will have the addendum on an upcoming agenda, but it won't be on the 11th. I don't think there's any rush to do it, is there? And-
Not necessarily, but I don't even know that it really
Okay.
takes a
So I would rather
motion.
put it on an agenda so that you have the time to ask the questions that you want to ask.
I would recommend that Mike McCarroll be here.
I will take that under advisement, thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the order this evening? We need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Yes. I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda, February 26, 2020, containing the warrants of February 28, 2020, and the meeting minutes of February 12, 2020.
Can I have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you, everyone.
Mary,